Quiet, Spencer. We need to watch MILF Manor.
I just started recording as you said that. That was perfect. Sorry, Spencer. Sorry, Spencer. Sorry, Spencer. We love Spencer. We're really scared of MILF Manor, though. That episode is gonna be a lot.
The first one, or the one where it's like, here's the fruit.
I've never been so unappetized by fruit in mind.
I'm just like, oh, if they would have just, I would have been like, yay, fruit. But then they're like, oh, there's a pig. Oh, it's one of those classes. Oh no.
Oh no, it's the bad class. We don't like this class.
Well, or it's not the class you want to have with your mom.
No.
But Charlene is like, students, you will know what you will know, and I will teach you.
Shockingly, that's not our episode today. We get another week before we get to talk about that.
Yay.
This is Welcome to Pop Culture Curiosities, a podcast where we tell each other stories from our own experiences on set, and also just the most interesting moments of pop culture, and usually behind the scenes pop culture that just fascinate us for how horrifying they are.
It's like, why didn't they include this in the season? Everyone would have watched it more.
Yeah, right. Today, we're going back to the 90s.
Yay, the decade of our births.
The decade of both of our births, yeah. I think we're going in between your birth year and my birth year, I think. We're talking about, I found this, you know how you're always like, hey, Avery, you did such great research? I cheated, I didn't do research. I found a Vulture article that was called, hang on, Spencer, I'm gonna pull it up just so that I credit it correctly.
In the podcast, we will immediately cut to Avery saying the thing. There will be no pause. Please, Spencer.
Spencer, please.
Then we just see like the white letters. It's like
he's gonna leave me out to dry in this edit. I just know it.
Or he has like the Inosuke laugh from Demon Slayer because he's like. But include the Bryce Papenbrook one because he's cool, even though people say usually the subs are better.
Stop it!
But we're a dub or I'm a dub house here.
What?
I mean, I can do okay with subtitles, but I really struggle to keep up with them sometimes. And sometimes I just need the dub, and then everybody's like, ugh. I'm like, look, I tried my best. I watch them in the subs when I can. Sometimes I can't.
Yeah, and it's like, hey, the voice actors are doing their best. They have to match lip flaps, and usually that sounds really weird to say lip flaps, but usually in other languages they just do a translation, but in America or in English, most of the time, it's like, gotta match what they're saying. So sometimes they don't match the emotion just right.
Oh, Natasha and I once did a video for the channel a couple years back where we covered an episode of that old 1970s Star Trek cartoon, like Saturday morning cartoon. Oh, I've never seen worse lip flap matching. It was bad. You start to appreciate good lip flap matching when there's like, Captain Spock, and it's like, oh no,
Captain Spock.
Oh, they didn't try at all. Oh, it's really bad. Okay, so I found a Vulture article. We'll credit it. It's called, actually, well, I was about to read it, but it's actually called "We'll Never Make That Kind of Movie Again." But then down here is the actual name. It's An Oral History of the Emperor's New Groove. Side note, a raucous Disney animated film that almost never happened. And I was reading this article, and it was such an in-depth, hilarious look at just why the making of the Emperor's New Groove was a shit show, and the fact that we have any Emperor's New Groove is a miracle. That I was just like, I need to tell Gabe this, and then I was like, this is a podcast. This is what we're gonna do for the podcast. So I was just like, we'll do MILF Manor. We needed a week to finish MILF Manor. We couldn't have done it in one sitting. We didn't have time, and also our brains couldn't. We were just gonna like, I don't know what was gonna happen to us. We were just sitting there, just like, oh my god, oh god, oh no, oh god, and then my dad came down into the room as we were watching MILF Manor, and we were just like, oh god, oh no.
Yeah, it's just you're watching or it's like that problem where you're just watching a show and like the worst part comes on when your parent enters the room, but it's just like
time.
But in MILF Manor,
Everything is the worst part.
the worst part.
I could pause it on any given minute and it would just be cringe.
I feel like the whale shark scene was fine, the date scene.
That was cute. That was fine. We'll talk about that next week. We can talk about that next week. Anyway, let's go back in time to, what year are we going back to? I think it's 1990. Say 1998. There's a couple of years that are important in this day. Oh, I turned it off. Sorry. I shut the TARDIS off.
TARDIS. Oh, don't worry. The TARDIS is back up again. Everything's fine.
Going back to the general late 90s.
Around the time of Lost World Jurassic Park. Oh gosh, what are we getting trapped in between? Or the TARDIS wants to have fun in the 90s.
Girls just want to have fun, and so does the TARDIS. Okay, here we go. So I'm just gonna read chunks of this article, so have fun with that, Spencer. I'm sorry, I'm gonna do the best that I can. So the article starts by noting the story of the making of the 2000s movie The Emperor's New Groove. Can you believe it? It's 23 years since The Emperor's New Groove. Side note. I know, right?
I remember watching it when I was younger, but it didn't feel like that long ago.
I found it on VHS tape at Goodwill, and I was just like, oh, I'll get these for the fun VHS collection. I was like, oh, VHS, it's that old. Oh my god. It's the making. So the making of this movie is the making of 3 movies, as this article goes on to note. There's the one that they wanted to make, the one that we have, and the documentary that they made about the making of the movie that was so awkward that Disney said, how about we just never release that? The article goes on to say, as we'll get into it, but it'll occasionally pop up online in like torrent sites somewhere. I've never seen it, but it's like Disney really doesn't want you to see that movie, apparently because of how bumbling it makes them look, from what I've heard. It just kind of makes them look like they didn't know what they were doing because allegedly they didn't know what they were doing while they were making this movie that turned into a completely different movie.
That reminds me of the Star Wars Christmas special that you never hear about.
I covered it. It was really bad.
Avery talks about stuff. Go to her YouTube right now.
You know what nobody talks about that in that movie? It's just right in the middle, there's blackface. No one in the history of like talking about how bad that is ever sat me down and went, you know, there's blackface in the middle of that, right? To the point where like I was watching it and I was like, that's blackface, right? I'm not crazy, right? I like started gaslighting myself. I'm like, maybe I'm the crazy one. Maybe it's all in my head because no one told me about that part.
You think they would have learned from Dumbo and a few other things that Disney has done, like, hey, maybe this is insensitive, or...
No, it was the 70s. They didn't have any insensitivity radars yet. It hadn't been invented yet.
Of course they haven't.
Yeah, there's also, like, a weird, like, it's supposed to be, like, the grandfather is watching porn, but it's not porn because they had to air it on primetime TV in the 70s. It's a whole thing. Whatever you've heard about the Star Wars holiday special, sitting through and watching it is way worse than what you could possibly imagine. It's horrible. Anyway, maybe that can be a different, when we get to Christmas, we'll do that episode. I'll tell you all the terrible things that happened behind the set of that. So the first movie that they wanted to make was called Kingdom of the Sun, and it was supposed to be an epic tale. I think if you know anything about the history of this movie, this is not like I hit the microphone. This is not a secret. Sorry, Spencer. This is not a secret. Like, the Kingdom of the Sun, it was supposed to be, again, I'm just going to keep quoting the Vulture article in chunks, so, not trying to steal their thunder. This is just put together better than any way that I could do it, so this is my main and only source this time. It was supposed to be this big tale of like Inca mythology. I actually kind of wonder what it would have been like. I think what we got was the best possible movie, but I still, to this day, I'm just like, there's an alternate universe where they have Kingdom of the Sun and Emperor's New Groove never happened.
Oh gosh, can you imagine doing some timeline jumping or parallel universe jumping?
Yeah, and you show up and you're like, hey, you want to watch Emperor's New Groove? And they're like, what? Oh my god, it's the Kingdom of the Sun timeline.
Yes. Then we watch it and we're like,
it was supposed to be It was supposed to be directed by the Lion King director Roger Allers. So it was gonna have a much different vibe. And it was supposed to star Owen Wilson and oh, I thought you were gonna do. You always.
yeah, I was waiting for the pause. Sorry. Sorry. Cut. Okay, reset.
So it starred Owen Wilson.
Wow.
There you go. And David Spade. David Spade was the one and only Cusco in every version, which makes sense. There's only one Cusco. Owen Wilson was attached to it, and then it. Again, we'll get into it, but it basically took them so long to get their act together that things changed.
Wow.
It was supposed to be the two of them. Wilson was going to be Pacha. I don't know if his name was Pacha yet, but it was going to be him, and David Spade was going to be Cusco, and they were basically going to have kind of like a Freaky Friday. Not like Freaky Friday. They were going to basically switch lives.
Oh, like the Prince and the Pauper?
Kind of, but then like in other iterations. So I can't get a straight answer. In some versions, it sounds like it was going to be Prince and the Pauper. Some versions, it sounds like it was going to be Freaky Friday, where they literally like their souls switch bodies.
Oh.
But then, there's a lot to unpack with this one. And the soundtrack was supposed to be like, Tarzan, where Phil Collins did all the music. It was going to be that, but Sting. Yeah. Also, and I feel like this is just the podcast of me getting ahead of myself, they were worried that Sting was going to bail on the project.
Oh.
So what they did was the documentary that was made, the one that Disney doesn't like to talk about, it was made by Sting's wife because it was her idea to make the documentary. And their words, they thought it was a better way to lock Sting in if his wife was committed to doing a documentary about it. So they let her do the documentary just for that reason, and then she never got to release her documentary, really. I think it premiered at Sundance, and then Disney went, oh, we can't let anybody see this. So, sad times, but moving on, Eartha Kitt was always the villainous, I don't think she was called Yzma yet, the article just says she was the villainous sorceress determined to blot out the sun. Because again, this was supposed to be much more serious the first time around. The article also says, quote, years of production snafus, doubt-filled meetings, and catastrophic screenings and arguments ended up shelving that version of the movie.
Oh.
Yeah. So, what we ended up getting was The Emperor's New Groove, which is like, I hope everybody out there has seen The Emperor's New Groove. It's a great movie. You should go see it. Finish watching our podcast for our SEO purposes, obviously. No, I'm just kidding. But then go watch the movie.
It's so good and it's so funny.
If they paused us to go watch it and come back, I wouldn't even blame them. I'd be just like, at least another person has seen it. Yeah. It's so good. There's Kronk. Kronk is simple husband material. We love Kronk.
Patrick Warburton.
Yes.
Oh, the poison. Cusco's poison. Oh, sorry. I did a good impression of him last night, but now I'm not. I'm just like, or never mind. I'm not going to do it. Spencer, cut that out.
Poison for Cusco. Cusco's poison.
Oh, the poison for Cusco. Cusco's poison. Yes.
Stop
Squeaker. Squeaking.
So Sting only got 2 songs that he wrote into the movie. One is, and I completely forgot this, the credit song when the credits roll. That's Sting. I completely forgot because
Oh.
little kid me always shut it off as soon as like the happy cartoons. As soon as like the somber music starts playing over the credits, I was just like, bye. That was fun. Let's watch something else. But also he also wrote the Vegas style Tom Jones intro song. That was written by Sting.
Oh, okay. I can't remember the word, or it, and the song is at the end too. As I can't
Because
remember.
everything begins and ends with me.
Me. Oh, okay.
Yeah, that one. Love that. Love that song. It's a bop. Oh, and then there's the little disco guy that's voiced by Tom Jones singing it. Yeah, it's great.
Yeah.
They also started running out of time. They had deadlines, right? Because after so much time, you got to just get something out. And the funniest thing to me is that the article references that one of their biggest timelines was allegedly an impending Happy Meal deal, where they had promised McDonald's a movie to sell toys from. And they had no movie, and McDonald's was like, where the hell are our toys, man? So I think that's funny that even the massive Disney crumbles under the pressure of McDonald's sponsorships.
Or it's like in the Telltale games, McDonald's will remember that.
Yes. In words of one of its co-creators, this impending deadline and all of the drama that happened previously resulted in the funniest writer's room you could possibly have, a table of people who had nothing to lose. So they basically they had an impending deadline and they had to scrap most of what they had and go, all right, fuck it. What do you got for me? We got nothing to lose because we have nothing to work with right now and a deadline.
I'm just imagining someone being like, he turns into a llama. Yes, put that in there. Okay.
Yeah, put that. A llama? Okay.
Why a llama? Because
llamas are adorable. Everybody loves llamas.
I'm sure someone's like, actually, they're a symbol in the something or other.
I'm sure they are. I'm sure they were already, because like they were working with like ink and myth. I assume, based on just cursory knowledge, that llamas are being native to that region, showed up in the myth somewhere, and somebody was like, "Ah, llama, yes, that'd be appropriately silly to turn like this jackass emperor into a llama for a couple of days." And his fur is going to be orange, just like his. It's going to be symbolic of his robe, like color of no llama that's ever existed. People are just going to start sending me pictures of orange llamas and being like, "Actually, there are orange llamas." I'm sorry, I don't know. I've never seen an orange llama. Maybe there are.
You're just gonna wake up in a herd of orange llamas and be like,
people will start sending them to my P.O. box. Just like, no, please. So again, I said there was the third movie, which was this production, which was this this documentary. It was called The Sweatbox. It proved so awkwardly truthful that Disney has refused to release it.
We don't want them to see us sweat.
If anybody sees it pop up online, though, send me that link because I've never seen it and I haven't been able to find it. I've only done like cursory searching for it, but I would love to see a movie that's so awkwardly, painfully realistic to how much trouble they had making this movie that Disney didn't want to see it. So, once upon a time, there was a movie called Kingdom of the Sun. Wow. I know. The writer of this article is great. I like the way that they set everything up for us. I'm really not trying to steal their article. It's just so you know. Did I mention that it's a Vulture article? It's not my article. It says that in the mid-1990s, the Renaissance was in full swing for Disney. They had Aladdin. They had... I was actually just watching one of the VHSs that I got at Goodwill was a Beauty and the Beast one, and it's like, coming in this Christmas year of 1992, and I was like, Aladdin, our newest adventure, and I was like, oh my god.
Was it like the one where it's like coming in here, and it had like the weird like blue and yellow animation in the back, and you could like see the words coming in? You can see that in like the earlier movies, like in the 90s and 2000s, but
yeah, it was just like this, like, coming in the Christmas of 1992, Prince Ali. I was like, oh my god, it was a new movie, you guys. It hadn't come out yet. So, like, Beauty and the Beast, Lion King, Aladdin, all of that, Little Mermaid had happened. Great, great movies had come out. So Disney was doing great. And then, like, if you remember in the later 1990s, they kind of lost the plot for a second. A lot of good movies came out of it, though, like Emperor's New Groove. But they were kind of, like, getting kicked around by DreamWorks at that point, so they were nervous. Um,
Once they saw Shrek, they're like, oh no. But that's like in the early 2000s.
they made Mulan, which is a good movie from what I remember of it, and then they made Pocahontas, which is the colonizer movie, and everybody was like, let's try to give it awards, but it was so yeah, they kind of it started wavering. It wasn't Oops All Bangers anymore. It was like Oops All Colonizers for a second there.
That just reminds me of in Black Panther. They call Martin Freeman's character colonizer all the time.
Yeah. I love when Shuri's like, oh, great, another white boy for me to fix. And then we find out that the first one was Bucky, and we're just like, oh, no, poor Bucky.
Oh, Bucky.
So I'll send this to Spencer so he can put in. But these are some screen tests of, like, from the original, like, the more serious version of the movie. I know, it's really pretty. It looks great. So the director says, Roger Aller says, I had finished Lion King and was looking around to see what to do next. Disney was starting to push to do things set in other cultures to varying degrees of, sometimes they hit the mark and sometimes it was like, appropriation the movie. Yay, thank you, Disney. I won't speak on anybody else's culture, but it's not really a secret that Disney really liked to make things on other cultures.
Yeah, learning about the real history of Pocahontas was just like
Childhood ruining?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway.
Yeah, anyway. So Tom Schumacher, executive vice president for Walt Disney at the time, feature animation department at the time, called him up and said he had 3 pictures up on the wall. Representations of Inca, Aztec, and Mayan cultures. For the Incan culture, there was a picture of these amazing stone buildings in Machu Picchu, a place that I've always wanted to go. I've wanted to go since I was 9, and I read a Nancy Drew book where she went to Machu Picchu. I'm sure if I read it back today, I'd be like, oh, that's not a very good representation of Machu Picchu.
Oh.
It really made me want to go to Machu Picchu. It made it sound like the most beautiful place in the world, which it kind of is. The city atop a mountain in the clouds, and I said I'd love to develop something around the Incas. I started to look for an idea. In their creation myth of the world, there was a god named, I'm going to say this wrong, Viracocha, who brought light to the world by throwing a rope around a distant, star and pulling it to Earth. So it's like this image of like lassoing the sun and like bringing it in. And so they were like, that's really pretty imagery. We should make a movie about that somehow. And so the movie originally was about like Yzma, or the character who became Yzma, was like trying to snuff out the sun and like gain power and like all these things. So it became like a struggle around the sun. If you've seen the movie, nothing has to do with the sun at all. They were like, yeah, forget that. We're fine. The most stunning visual in the film would have been the conclusion where the sun is roped and pulled into this writhing mass of dark images. I was hoping it would be a mix of mythology, humor, and romance. And he goes on to say that he was looking at Prisoner of Zenda as a story. It's about a prince and a distant cousin who are dead ringers for each other. And the prince has enemies that want to kidnap him. So they kind of switch in like a prince and the pauper situation. Yzma was going to be the high priestess. I guess she's the royal advisor. She's kind of still the high priestess, though. Like, I can imagine that they didn't really change much about her actual, like, practicality of her character if she was supposed to be the high priestess, because she's in a high position of power, she gives advice, and she has a lot of magical properties. That's, like, abilities. That's a high priestess.
She's a scientist, and science back in the day was witchcraft.
It doesn't sound like she had Kronk at the beginning, though, so I think we would have all missed Kronk.
Squeaker, squeak, squeak and squeak.
Yeah, Patrick Warburton, I saw in an interview, he said he found the funniest part about it was just, like, the whole nucleus of, like, how he thinks about that character is just the idea that in that one scene, they're literally trying to kill the emperor, but he's like more worried about his spinach puffs, and that in and of itself lies all of his personality, and that's just lovely to think about.
Oh, that makes more sense when Yzma's just like, you know what? I never liked your spinach puffs. Ever. Ugh. That's it. She's got to go. No, there's another way from above. Whoosh.
He goes on to say, Owen Wilson was the lead, the llama herder, Pacha. Okay, so his name was Pacha. I should have kept reading before I said I didn't know.
Wow.
He says, I think he had just done Bottle Rockets, so no one really knew him, but this kind of he had this kind of slow, drawly way of speaking, which felt like an equivalent of someone from Out in the Sticks, which, poor Owen Wilson, that's such a drag. I like Owen Wilson's voice. He has a very calming way of speaking. That's why they let him be the Bob Ross guy in that new movie.
Okay.
Yeah. And everybody knew David Spade from Saturday Night Live, so they thought, like, David Spade is always, like, up here on the energy level, and Owen Wilson apparently just sounds like a guy from the Sticks. So they thought that'd be funny. David Spade is quoted as saying, it was me and Owen Wilson. We were going to switch jobs. I was an emperor and he was a peasant. And Carla, oh, I always say her name wrong. Carla Gugino, I think is how you say her name.
Probably.
Was a princess. The first time I did my voice, I was naively saying, what do you want? This kind of guy? A deep voice? Or an emperor like, ooh, highfalutin guy? And they said, no, just your nasally, normal, annoying, sarcastic voice.
Oh. As someone who speaks with a nasally voice, I feel that.
So these poor guys both were just like, your voices sound weird. Go record some stuff for us. The guy who ended up directing, Mark Dindal, he goes on to say, I came on to the beginning stages of storyboard. I don't think a story reel had been put together yet. I was brought in to help that process. At the time, they were having co-directors. Roger was director and I was co-director, kind of like a co-pilot, someone to bounce ideas off of because it's a very collaborative medium, which is true. Also, Sting comes on board with a twist, it goes on to say. So after the police had dissolved, Sting was kind of, this article in my mind makes him sound kind of rudderless. Like he was just like, oh, what do I do now? But they were like, he was a huge name though, right? So like Elton John, Elton John ended up doing the music for The Lion King. They kind of were like, let's do that, but with Sting. So that was what was happening. So here's some pictures of Sting in the 90s working with them on music. That he's probably working on music that's never going to be heard right now in that picture.
Oh. His wife is like, I'm so proud of you, Mr. Sting. Good for you.
She calls him Mr. Sting.
Or I don't know his first name. So good job, Mr. Sting. You're doing great, sweetie.
You're doing amazing, sweetie.
Mrs. Sting.
Mrs. Sting.
I'm working. I'm sorry, I don't know their names.
Allers says, I had put a year or more in before I had the idea of asking Sting if he would like to do the music. On one of his albums, he had something that was kind of Latin American sounding. We met in Sting at his home in England, which is sort of near Stonehenge. I'm now picturing him living directly in Stonehenge.
There's like a secret compartment that opens to like an underground mansion.
But also, like, isn't that kind of the epitome of like Disney in the 90s? Hey, that English guy had the kind of sort of Latin American sounding album that one time. Let's have him do the Incan Mayan cultural movie. Great job. Nothing against Sting. I just think it's funny that they were just like, yeah, get Sting in there. It kind of sounded Latin American that one time.
And I'm sure a lot of people are like, no.
Oh, no. His wife, Trudy, came up with the idea of doing the documentary about Sting's experience on a Disney film. And they basically just said, yeah, sure, because it'll tie him down to the movie more. I feel bad for her. She seemed to really be interested in doing this. Randy Fulmer, who's a producer, says, I think Tom Schumacher wanted to keep Sting in the boat. He was afraid Sting had an unrealistic idea of how bumpy the ride would be, that Sting would get exasperated with the process and walk away. So he thought, if Trudy's doing a documentary, it's another way to lock them into the process. They literally were like, this is going to be such a shit show that Sting is going to get tired of our bullshit and walk away, so we need to tie him down in some, like, material way. So let his wife do a documentary. Sure.
Yeah, that sounds like a great idea.
Yeah.
We're holding your wife hostage, but she's just making the documentary. She can't leave, so you have to be here.
They're
Well,
ransoming his wife. Wait, let me talk to my wife. Not until you give us 3 Latin American adjacent songs.
and this is before he even starts writing anything. He's like, "Oh, I need to get a coffee break." No, you're leaving. You must stay.
Oh my god. Well, apparently they say he kept a notebook that looked like a mathematician's notebook because it had 100 pages of really tight, detailed beats. He was like, "Is this a template song you have in mind?" So he was doing his job, basically. Yeah. But the way that this interview is given, it sounds like they're complaining. They might not have been. Maybe I'm just missing the tone of their voice, but they're like, "Oh, he came in with all these notes and ideas and stuff. Weird,
in
right?
A math book."
Yeah. Yeah, it's like whenever an actor is like, doing research on the character and the director's like, they came in with all this like research stuff. And it's like, are you complaining about a person doing their job well?
Oh,
I'm sorry.
That just reminds me of The Witcher when Henry Cavill's like, this wouldn't happen.
And then they complained.
And it's just like, he doesn't.
I'm sorry he's keeping everybody on task about what's supposed to be happening.
Yeah, making sure the fans don't turn against you for changing the source material so much.
Yeah, I'm sure they're going to do great without him.
Or isn't Liam Hemsworth the new Witcher?
Yeah.
All the Miley Cyrus fans are like, boo!
Yeah.
All the characters can buy themselves flowers.
Fresh off the drama of all of the millions of fans of his ex hating him, he's now taking over a project that everybody hates him anyway because he's not the main guy who was the main guy. I'm sure that's going to go great.
We shall see.
We shall see. I'm not wishing that it goes badly, by the way. I think it's funny from afar. It's not my fandom drama, so other people's fandom drama is funny,
Yeah, it's like off to the side eating the popcorn like I can't wait to see how this turns out. Anyway, yeah.
Yep. Mm-hmm. He says, you could tell he got kind of uptight and a little annoyed with us because it didn't go the way we thought it would go. He was so anxious to get going that he kept jumping ahead of us. Sometimes we would drop a character that was going to be the person singing the song. So I love how they're trying to make this sound like Sting's problem, right?
He's literally doing their job and they're like, oh, he seems slightly irritated that we literally just made all this work he did moot.
So, like, they would talk to him about, here's this character, and he's like, oh, okay, so I'll give the character this song, and they'll be like, that's great, and he comes back with what was probably a great song, and they're like, oh, we moved on from that, we cut that character, and I'm just picturing Sting going, and just running out of the room crying, because that's what I would have done.
Oh, but isn't he British? He would be, wah. With a British accent.
No, the British never let you see them cry.
Oh.
It's all on the inside, they say.
Oh, okay. Stiff upper lip.
Stiff upper lip.
Never mind. I'm sorry.
Aller says, Sting wrote 5 or 6 songs, none of which made it into the Emperor's New Groove because the tone of it was so different. I love the one he wrote for Yzma, Snuff Out the Light. Have you heard? Because there was a song... I'm going to pull it up real quick. Spencer can put in a little clip here. So, you know how Eartha Kitt doesn't get a song and everybody's like... You had Eartha Kitt and she didn't sing.
I remember on the TV show she got a song. But...
Yeah. So she was supposed to have a song. And then apparently Sting wrote Eartha Kitt a great song that she did a demo for, and he just cut it because they ended up going in such a different direction that they're like, we can't use this anymore. It doesn't have anything to do with what we're making anymore. Eartha Kitt, Snuff Out the Light.
Pull the lever, Crunk. I can't think of any more of her lines, so I'll just speak like Eartha Kitt.
Is that my voice? Is that my voice?
Oh, you have to watch Jujubee from RuPaul's Drag Race All-Stars 5 impersonating Eartha Kitt because it's like Snatch Game of 11, one of the individuals, or Jeffrey Boyer Chapman, who's like asking, because they're all contestants, it's like, Bachelorette number 2, I'm from Canada, and if we were in a room that was slightly chilly, what would you do to warm me up? And, Jujubee's like messing around with the other contestant and is like, I will get up and I will walk sensually to the thermostat, and I will turn up the thermostat to a sensible 74. And it was just like a laugh. She did it a lot better than I did, but it's like, yes.
Amazing.
The new Eartha Kitt.
The new Eartha Kitt. I'm pulling it up on my phone because my computer's like, what internet?
Oh,
We've never had internet ever.
oh, that just flashback to that one time when the internet was like, no, and your dad was trying to fix it, and it was just like, it's fine.
Oh, while we were on live?
Yes.
That was so fun, wasn't it, guys?
Oh, weren't we were reading either Imagines or Model Land at that point.
Yeah, I think it was Imagines.
Oh, Imagines.
When a woman acquires a certain age, and the men who adored you no longer swoon, it pays to avoid the sunlit days and live by the light of the kindly moon. But the moon grows old, just like us all, and her beautiful years are done. So now she prays through endless days to take her revenge on the sun.
Yeah, so it's Eartha Kitt being like, I'm gonna fight the sun. You know, people are like, I'm gonna fight God. Eartha Kitt's just like, I'm gonna fight the sun because I'm old now. It's just like Yzma just like having this moment, and I'm just like, they cut her moment.
This is my moment. Oh gosh, they should have found a way to work that in, because now I want to sing about the moon fighting the sun.
Yeah. The whole song, you can listen to it later, but like it's just to give you a taste. That's what we lost.
Sting is just like, this is fine, Disney. This is fine.
He probably still gets a little bit of a twitch when he sees the Emperor. He's probably the only person on Earth that doesn't like the Emperor's New Groove, because he's like, that movie that like, not like one specifically, but like when a movie comes out and it's really popular, and we worked on it and we had a shit show, and we're just like, everybody's like, oh my god, I love insert redacted title of movie. Yeah, that was great, wasn't it? Oh, it's such a great movie. Did you have fun working on it? Uh-huh.
Oh gosh, I'm trying to think of one off the top of my head, but I'm just like, usually most of the time it's like, yes, I was filming the scene for 14 hours and they used 2 seconds of it. This is fine. Or, oh, Natasha, she was on a Marvel film and she had to be out in the hot sun, and the character was like on top of a really tall building, and you saw like CGI people, and it's just like, she had standing out in the sun for all those hours for no reason.
Oh yeah, I've heard that story. So they say, Disney films take a lot of time to make, obviously. But they said it became less of a work in progress, where after a couple of years, it seemed less progress than usual was being made on the film. So, like, a couple years, they're like, okay, how's that movie coming along? And they're just like, well, Sting wrote this really cool song, but we're not going to use it.
Sting is like the only one actually doing any work, and everyone else is like, they're like, ooh woo, and it's like, no, you are not ooh woo, Disney. Sting is ooh woo. You are not cinnamon roll right now. Disney's like, ooh, no, get out of here, Disney.
The screenwriter says, David Reynolds, screenwriter, says, I had been one of the original writers on Late Night with Conan O'Brien. I started the show up in 1993 and was there until 1995. Then I came back to LA. I hadn't slept in 2 years. I started rewriting on Tarzan. Then I worked on A Bug's Life. I started stacking up jobs a couple of weeks on Dinosaur, changes to Atlantis, Toy Story 2, like an old studio writer. In the middle of that, they said, come over to Kingdom of the Sun. I saw the whole story. The Prince and the Pauper, then everything goes darkness, and you've got to rope the sun. It wasn't very funny. They asked me to rework dialogue and that kind of stuff. Fulmer says, with Kingdom of the Sun, it seemed so promising at first. There were so many elements all of which were fun and good. Yzma was terrific. Sting was doing fantastic music, but I think Roger tried to hang on to too many elements. I met a very nice woman on a plane once coming back from New York where we'd recorded Sting. She was like, oh, you work at Disney. What are you doing? Blah, blah, blah. Oh, my. So what the movie's about is, and I felt like I talked until we got to Los Angeles trying to explain it all, and then I realized, okay, this is not good. There's too much in here. To recap, the writer spent an entire flight trying to explain the plot of the movie to this nice old lady, And by the end of the flight from New York to LA, neither one of them understood and they were both confused. And so he got off the plane being like, I gotta rewrite this movie.
Totally the editor of Model Land.
Oh boy. Hang on, I need to plug in my phone. Hang on. It's dying.
Oh no.
I just find that so funny. The image of this guy being like, okay, so here's the movie. 3.5 hour flight. He can't explain the movie in a way that this lady understands, and now he's confused.
Both of them have the same facial expression of just like.
It's like, I gotta call my editor. Like, I gotta get somebody on the phone. Chris Williams, who was a storyboard artist, said, I was there for a good long run while it was still Kingdom of the Sun. Getting the story together is really challenging. I mean, every movie is hard, but it was a difficult period where we just weren't getting the traction. And Aller says, it started off just as just chipping away. I'd have to take this out. I'd have to change this. So they're looking at their movie that they made as like this block of stone that they now have to carve something usable out of.
Oh gosh, it's like the iceberg of Temple of the Sun, and it's just like, oh, look at the nice little iceberg, and then it's like the iceberg.
Which, like, I mean, things obviously change, but like, I just feel so bad the thought of them just like being like, all right, we've got to like kill off all this other stuff to get something usable out of there. It's like, oh no, this is 2 years into the process.
And Sting is like, am I the only one doing actual work here besides like talking about what is happening? I'm writing lyrics, you guys. Did you hear about the moon fighting the sun kind of thing?
They're like, can you believe Sting like wants references and like goals and stuff. Can you believe it? He's like working.
He's so demanding.
How dare he come in and do the job we asked him to do?
But don't worry, he can't leave. His wife is filming the documentary.
This is like one of the biggest artists in the world right now, and they're just like, ugh, he's like working for us and doing a job and stuff. I can't believe it.
And mildly irritated. How dare he? We are Disney, gosh darn it.
Yeah, like, I get, like, obviously things have to change. Like, I'm sure songs get cut from everything, but they cut, like, most of what he did, and they seem to not really have a fleshed out idea. And he was like, okay, so you want this kind of thing? Okay, here's this kind of thing. No, we don't want that.
Where do you want to go out to eat tonight? I don't know, you choose somewhere. How about a pizza place? No, I don't like that.
Yeah, have you ever worked for a boss who doesn't know what they want until you give them something and they're like, oh, that's definitely not what I want. You have to do it again?
Sometimes.
I have.
Oh.
It feels like Sting was doing that.
Oh, that's unfortunate.
Yeah. Aller says it was becoming reduced and then it wasn't quite as interesting as it started off. There was an article where some writer did a comparison of all the Disney films. Maybe it was all the modern canon, I don't remember, and made it look like they were all the same. They all had a hero, they all had a villain, they all had a love song. I think it freaked Peter Schneider, president of Disney Feature Animation, out. He felt we were just repeating ourselves. So some writer did the BuzzFeed thing of like, did you know that all movies are movies? Did you know that there's conflict in every single movie and that's why they're all the same? And it freaked out the president of the company. Or I'm sorry, that freaked out the president of the animation feature department to the point where he was just like, maybe we are all the same. And he had an existential crisis.
But I'm just like, but that's such a general way to put it.
Yeah. Yeah, it's called tropes. Like, tropes, everything is a trope. Tropes are just motifs of, like, you know, ways that we've been telling each other stories for thousands of years. They're not cliches until tropes get used too much, and then they're cliches.
Oh, fun.
Yeah. Some random writer doing the laziest media criticism ever just like gave the head of the department an existential crisis, so they had to start over.
I mean, good thing. Well, maybe that kicked the process into high gear, because without that writing, then the person would have been like, oh yeah, let's just keep going in a direction that is not working.
Fulmer says, Roger had been thinking about this for a long time before we started the movie. He was charmed by Peru and the culture. Some people are completely in love with originality and being super authentic with parts of the culture, and other people, it's like, That doesn't really matter. We're here to entertain people. That's a debate that goes on often at Disney. I imagine that's true. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, this beautiful culture. Are we going to honor it? Nah, that really important part of their culture and their history. Throw that out the window. We don't need that. Chip away at it.
Oh gosh, I want to say an example, but I'm just like,
You can say it. Spencer will cut it out if you really want.
Oh, I was just gonna say like Pocahontas stuff.
Oh no, Pocahontas, I think we're all in agreement that Pocahontas was a mistake.
Yeah, or like in films when they're like the Native American burial grounds, and the Native Americans are like, that's not a thing. That's never been a thing. It is a graveyard.
Please, dear God, stop telling people this thing.
And the Native Americans are like, Pet Cemetery. Why? Because Stephen King likes to use that trope a lot.
Stephen King also likes to think that he can write women correctly, and he cannot.
It's always how do you know when men write female characters? Or there's no specific answer. That's just like a rhetorical question. It's just like, oh yay, she just likes the guy, and that's her whole I remember I was watching the movie Alone, which is like a zombie film, and the female character, like she's surviving, but she later there's a point where the guy doesn't like call her on the walkie-talkie, and she's like, where were you? I was calling you on the walkie-talkie. You need to answer me, da-da-da. And then pretty much her entire character was like, you, the male lead. And it's just like, men wrote this, didn't they?
Stephen King wrote a novel that I actually read for work because I was working on the production of it, where in the novel, one of the characters who is a woman, it says she wasn't wearing any makeup except for, to cover up the bags under her eyes, right? And so she'd been crying, so these dark circles of makeup were running down around her. And it's like, Stephen King, you have a whole wife. Can't you ask her how makeup works?
Yeah, all they literally have to do is be like, hello, is this right? And then hear a, no, okay, let me correct that.
So yeah, anyway, Don Hahn, another executive producer, says, first of all, every Disney movie feels flat when you start out. If you read Ed Catmull's book about Pixar, every movie is awful the first 6 times. Then the 7th time, it's kind of good. So that was that case. Jeffrey Katzenberg had left in 94. He was a huge part of our lives. That's a whole other story. That's probably a whole other podcast episode about the leaving of Katzenberg and their breakup and lovers to enemies relationship, where he went and started a whole company to go and say screw you Disney. It was a whole thing. Yeah, that's a different story for a different time. There was a lot of stress going on between Roy Disney and Michael Eisner, who was I want to say CFO. I could be wrong if he's the CEO. CFO, if I'm getting those mixed up. I'm sorry. He was the big Disney man, and everybody loved to hate him in the 90s. And I think we were looking for some change in a new direction. That era was just us reaching out in a number of directions, trying to find out, is there a genre, an approach we can take that doesn't involve a Broadway musical that we love and tried on for so many years? And it is true. It's not a musical. They went into that era of like, we are Disney, and even though the musicals are what everybody loves from us, we're just not doing that right now. It's 2000. It's a crazy new time. Y2K didn't happen, so our whole plans are off. That was Disney in 2000, I imagine. But as Pixar grew, as Blue Sky grew, as DreamWorks grew, as the business became competitive financially, other people recruited 15, 10, 20 of our top people. We were fighting a war of survival. You really want to put a finger on it. Jeffrey was as maniacal as Trump was. I'm going to destroy Michael Eisner. That's the residue of what was happening in this period. So they had a lot going on between the two of them that doesn't really have anything to do with this movie specifically, but clearly tensions are still high.
Oh my goodness.
As maniacal as Trump was.
Oh. Oh, they did not like each other.
Nope.
Where's the fanfic where they're like, I'm sorry, it's fine.
Steve Anderson says, I was asked to come on to Kingdom of the Sun just to help out for a screening, which they do often if they need a couple extra wrists for maybe a month or something. it may have been the third or fourth screening, but it turned out that it was the screening, the one that imploded. We all left the theater that we have on the first floor in feature animation. We marched up to the story room on the third floor. They had tables set up in a big square. Everybody took their place. Tom Schumacher and Peter Schneider, the heads of the studio, came in, sat down, closed the door. Tom said, "We just want to thank everyone for their work on the screening, and we'd like to ask you to leave now. We want to talk with Mark and Roger." Next thing we know, Roger's whole vision was in question and the movie's future as well. Han says, "Roger was and is a really revered artist, The Little Mermaid and Beauty and the Beast, just an amazing artist and storyteller." Williams says, "I do remember after one of the screenings, either Tom or Peter said, 'Roger, if it wasn't you, I think I'd be pressing a button right now.'"
And a trapdoor opens.
Yeah. And then he got the idea, and then he was like, "Oh my God."
We'll build everything around that moment.
And I remember saying, this is Anderson, and then I remember saying there's too many elements in the movie. It was Prince and Popper. It was also transformation of somebody into a llama. So they had the llama part at this point. So it was Prince and Popper, but there was a Prince and Popper and llama, apparently was what we were going for. But then there was Yzma, who wants to raise the dead, snuff out the light, and have a world of darkness. But she also wants eternal youth and beauty. So it's like, okay, but which one does she want?
She can't have everything, unfortunately.
Yes, she can. She's voiced by Eartha Kitt, and she can have whatever she wants.
Never mind. Give her what she wants. Get rid of the sun, dang it. Move it right now. Get that lasso and move it.
Aller says, "I just felt like we were losing sense of the culture." Really, at this point, he's just like, "We're losing sense of the culture." I know it's not on everyone's mind at the studio. Let's do films to honor cultures. The bottom line is, let's do entertaining films that everybody's going to want to see with their kids. I get that, but hopefully one does both.
Uh-huh.
I think I know what he's saying, but he said it in the funniest way possible. William says, "I think Tom and Peter were looking at the story in the room and hearing the input. They felt that there was probably one faction that was more connected to the story as it existed and wanting to refine it. And then they heard other people giving opinions that suggested they might be a completely different movie out there. So there was the impetus for Tom and Peter deciding to do something which was, I think, pretty unheard of and not something necessarily not something I would necessarily recommend. They split the team into two halves.
Oh.
So at this point, they gave Mark Dindal a small crew, and they gave Allers a small crew to come up with two different versions of the story, which is just kind of awful and compete against each other.
Oh no. I have only two teams in my hands with ideas, and only one idea will be chosen.
The picture in my hand represents the llama that will be moving on to the fun.
We'll be moving on to the movie made. The losers will pack your things and go home, and then come back to work on your competition's project.
Exactly. It's like how in early America, I thought it had stopped recording for a second. I was going to be so sad. It's still recording. The vice president, or would be like your opponent was the person who became the vice president.
Oh.
So like if you lost to somebody, you then had to be their VP.
Oh.
Awkward. Yeah.
It's like, hello person who beat me. What do you want me to do?
Or at least that's what I was told. It's in Hamilton, so take it up with Lin-Manuel Miranda if it's not true.
Now that's historically accurate.
Yeah.
More than most Disney films, at least early on.
Oh yeah. Han says, "It was a bake-off, plain and simple. Katzenberg, rightly or wrongly, would say, okay, we're doing Pocahontas. It's Dances with Wolves meets Romeo and Juliet. We're doing that. The bake-off was more about indecision than in the ranks. There was a lack of executive leadership that could just say, we're doing this, and we're doing that. We had bake-offs from 99 all the way through 2005.
Oh,
So this went beyond just The Emperor's New Groove. This was what they were doing for a bunch of their movies, and it kind of makes sense, right? Because people associate those 5 or 6 years with like kind of a disjointedness in Disney, where like it didn't feel like they knew what they wanted to do. And the truth was, they didn't. They were out there going, "Here's the secret sauce. It's Pocahontas meets Dances with Wolves."
They're just picking two movie names out of a hat. Like, okay, we have Jurassic Park and My Fair Lady. No, I don't know.
We have Singing in the Rain and Magic Mike. Good luck, contestants.
well, and then you get Tom Holland with his umbrella lip sync and lip sync battles, and Disney's just like, we should have thought of something like that.
William says, up until that moment, it was clear that we were all trying to do, which is to support Roger and help him make his movie. Suddenly, my job changed. My job was now to work with Mark to try to help develop another movie. And we were competing with Roger. It was probably one of the most stressful periods of my life.
Oh, no.
Yeah. Anderson says, I got pulled onto both teams, so I was picking back and forth.
Oh.
It was really uncomfortable because even though everyone could sort of acknowledge that the Kingdom of the Sun movie was not working, everybody just loved Roger and believed so much in him. It was so sad to watch things crumble for him. And then I had to go over to Mark and do his thing, which was super fun, but I felt weird and sort of a traitor. I felt like a weird traitor or something, hopping back and forth between both teams.
Oh, cut to the in The Force Awakens, traitor. Then the guy has like the saber thing.
I'm just picturing everybody on the Kingdom of the Sun side was like, whoa, you got to work on the fun movie? What was that like?
Well, we get this cool Eartha Kitt song written by Sting. What do you have? And they're like, a whole movie. And they're just like,
Tracy Miller Zarnecki, I hope I'm saying that correctly, assistant production manager, story publicity. I spent a lot of quality time with the documentary crew, and then the movie changed, which was fascinating because being with the documentary crew who were allowed in some of the very difficult meetings that were happening, it was unheard of. We were like, I can't believe we're filming this. Hi, Perry.
Perry can't believe it either.
I know. Perry's like, did you hear they cut that Eartha Kitt song?
Yeah. Or that's Perry's like, I have some things to say. Eartha Kitt, aka Catwoman.
Perry does kind of look like the cat that Eartha Kitt's character Yzma turns into at the end of the actual movie. A little. Like they're gray. They're both gray cats, and they both have an attitude problem.
Oh, I thought the cat was white.
Am I misremembering what the cat looks like?
Am I misremembering what the cat looks like?
Spencer, put a picture of Yzma Cat in the video only version. If you're watching us on YouTube, you get to know which one of us was right. It was probably Gabe.
I don't know. I'm usually wrong.
Oh. William says, I really was not thrilled with the fact that they were doing the documentary. We had precious little time and our story meetings were critical, but we would have these film crews running around behind us. A story meeting is a difficult thing because people have to present their ideas. You're making yourself vulnerable. It can be scary. I see these moments where a story artist would start to say something and then literally a boom mic would swing across the room and hover over them. Aller says, I remember after having the worst screening, JP interviewed me right before going in and right after coming out with all the bad news. It was like, wow, I'm going to have to pull myself up by my collar to do this interview. I feel so bad.
It's like everything, or it's like that scene in Euphoria where the character is like trying to fix himself up in the mirror and they're crying, but they're trying to smile, but the smile is faltering.
Yeah. John Paul Davidson, director of The Sweatbox, the documentary, says, I thought Kingdom of the Sun was great. It seemed more like a classic Disney thing. I thought that Sting had written a couple of songs which were some of his very best. They were incredibly moving and complex. They had this mythic element with all the Incas plus a love story. It was going to be terrific film. In the same realm of The Lion King, it was a shock when it all bit the dust.
Oh, And Sting is like, at least someone appreciates the work I put into this.
Sting is flipping tables in his office wherever he is. He's sitting on top of Stonehenge just throwing things.
And he's like, oh, I have to put this back up later.
Tourists are like, is that Sting? And he's like, get the fuck out of here, tourists.
You will never speak of this. No one will believe you. There's no documents.
I was rooting for you. We were all rooting for you.
Learn something from this. Disney, when you go to bed at night, you lay there and you take responsibility for yourself, because no one's going to take responsibility for you. You're rolling your eyes and you're acting like this because you heard it all before. You heard this all before. You don't know what the heck I've been through.
Poor Sting. So we all got back. This is Williams now talking. So we all got back together. It was a strange meeting. Both teams were sitting together at the big story room. Tom and Peter were the judges. Roger was first, and he pitched some of his new ideas and what he wanted to adjust. Then we got up and pitched. Even more than probably pitching a story of new characters, we were pitching a tone. We were suggesting a radically different tone than what Kingdom of the Sun had been. A lot of what was funny about it was just how preposterous it was, which is the movie that we got. And I'd never heard Tom and Peter laugh before. They were almost literally on the floor laughing. You felt which way the wind was blowing, and Roger was incredibly gracious. He stepped in and said, I can feel which way this is going, and I totally understand. I appreciate what's good about it and what they're doing. So he made it easier on Tom and Peter. He made it easier on all of us, and after working for a very, very long time on this other movie, rather than thinking about himself, he thought about everybody else in the room. Oh, I feel so bad.
Oh, poor Roger.
Poor Roger. You deserve better, Roger. Dindal says, Roger and I spoke on the phone. I had come out to be his co-director, not take the movie and run with it in another direction. Dindal ended up literally being the director.
Oh.
So he literally did take it and run in the other direction, but it wasn't his fault. He didn't mean to. He just had to. Mickey Mouse had a gun to his head. It was like, Disney, you... Oh, oh. you
better make this movie. Sorry. This is a Hootie impression from the Owl House. This isn't copyright Mickey Mouse.
Hootie does sound like somebody doing a Mickey Mouse impression.
That's literally what Alex Menken, or the maker of Gravity Falls, he literally was just like a placeholder voice and just decided to do like a bad Mickey Mouse impression, and then the Dana who made the Owl House was like, yes, and he was just like, what? And then he also voices King, so he like has to speak like in his regular voice, and then as, my name is Hootie. Hi, Luce. Boom. Ow.
Beautiful.
Thank you.
I could have stayed on as a directing partner, Roger Allers says, but I just didn't think I could do it. I'd put so much into it. I mean, it was 4 years developing the movie, and it was like 1/3 animated, and it was just going to be too disheartening for me. I had no resentment towards anybody who took over the film. I myself had worked with another director in the early versions of Lion King before he was taken off, and I was teamed up with somebody else. It happens so often. I feel bad.
Oh gosh, it's like the times that I've gone, or I remember on one set, I was supposed to be a scientist, but they're like, never mind, you're this random college student now.
Han says, Brenda Chapman got taken off Brave, which was a story about her and her daughter. It's almost a tradition at a certain point. Which, by the way, I could go into, and I'm going to do a whole video about how Brave does not get the respect it deserves. Everybody acts like, oh, Brave is this bad movie. And it's like, no. Brave is the quintessential mother-daughter movie. It walked so Lady Bird could run, and knowing that a woman wrote it about her and her daughter and then got kicked off the movie, it's just, oh, isn't that just icing on top of the cake?
Oh, and I really like Brave, but I remember like in high school reading like a completely different description of what the movie was, so I was just like, what?
Yeah.
But I love Brave.
Not to be that person, but Brave oftentimes, not all the time, but oftentimes, it gets reviewed by specific reviewers who happen to be men, and I don't think they understand. Like, not that they don't understand, but just like, I remember watching that movie with my mother in theaters, and it's a whole different experience. And I feel like there are certain, not all guys, but there are certain guys who review the movie and go, but they're just like running around and then the mom's a bear and stuff. It doesn't make any sense. Why would she want to do that to her mom? And it's just like, it's a whole thing. I won't get into it right now because I've already been telling you about this for an hour and 8 minutes. I will continue on. Part 4, a table of people who had nothing to lose. So, by 1999, Ink and Mythology Adventure Romance Musical about llama herders and prince changing places, gone. It's just gone. It was now a goofy buddy comedy being written, quote, probably the funniest writer's room you could possibly have. The writers had that room had approximately 1 year to get it done. They were scrapping and starting over with a year left after 4 years. Oh, here's a picture of Eartha Kitt recording lines.
She's stunning.
I love her.
She's amazing.
When they were with Mark's version, the one thing they didn't do was change the release date. So Kingdom of the Sun release date became the Emperor's New Groove release date.
Talk about pressure.
We had a year, literally, to put the whole thing together. There's a deadline because we got a McDonald's Happy Meal that has come to a certain date, and there are big fines to pay if you don't do that. They were literally asked to the mercy of McDonald's. So now Ronald McDonald comes up next to Goofy and also has a gun to their head, and it's just like, what does Ronald McDonald sound like? You better get things together.
like a dude, I think.
He just sounds like a dude, yeah.
Don't mess with McDonald's, then insert Rick and Morty like Szechuan sauce.
You mess with McDonald's, you get the McNuggets, you know?
Yeah.
I don't know where that was going. It was supposed to sound like you mess with the bull, you get the horns, but there's no equivalent.
You mess with the clown, you get the clown car. I don't know.
You get the clown shoes.
Oh, that's even better.
You mess with the clown, you get the shoes. Put that on a t-shirt.
And you're just like, t-shirt.
Oh my god.
I'm typing on Perry.
Reynolds says, I remember early on when I was working on Tarzan, it was around 5:45 or 7, and somebody says, well, okay, that's it. I'm just going to leave it here, and we'll pick it up tomorrow. And I said, oh, are we ordering dinner now? And they said, what? We don't do that. No, we're going home. And these characters aren't going anywhere. We've got 4 years to make this thing. I just couldn't wrap my head around the idea that you could leave things mid-sentence, basically. On Emperor's New Groove, we were writing in real time. In a normal 4-year process, you've got meetings, you've got development people going, what if the girl was a boy? What if the boy was a flower? What if the bird was a flower? And then you have to run all those ideas. But we didn't have any time. They had to leave us alone. It was the greatest thing in the world. Production departments did not have time to say, we don't like that. They just had to, they were like, look, you're getting what you're getting. Because happy meals have to be made.
Ronald McDonald is like behind the building, ready to get someone who's by themselves.
It's
kind of a great lesson in how, like, media teams kind of end up interfering with the creative process, right? Because people love The Emperor's New Groove to this day. And that was like, they just had to leave the writers alone to do whatever they wanted to do. And so it turned out that they just made a better movie that way. Instead of having to worry about, like, what if we marketed it this way? What if we did this? What if it was this?
This is like the slow turn into camera, like, what if we just let writers do their job instead of interfering and messing with their creative vision?
And trying to pander to everybody in a movie that's pretty lackluster, and then we just get reboots all the time, and nobody likes them, but everybody goes to watch them all the time. Anyway.
My first thought is, Suicide Squad and the rebooted Fantastic Four.
The Suicide Squad.
Or wait, no, that's the one with James Gunn. That's the good one. Suicide Squad is the one that they kept trying to change the tone of. Because they're like, we want to be like Marvel because they're popular. I remember seeing, side note, this could be cut out, but I remember reading a story about how Margot Robbie did like a full 360 run in an elevator without like any harness or anything. She literally ran 360 degrees in an elevator for the stunt, because when Harley Quinn was in the elevator, she literally, like, or she was getting attacked, and she literally like ran up the walls and around and
But it
stuff.
was like an accident?
No, she was supposed to do it like that, but she just didn't have any harnesses or anything, and she did it herself. And people are like, why do I have to hear about Jared Leto's year long like method acting for like a mediocre performance, but we're not hearing about Margot Robbie literally running 360 degrees in an elevator without a harness?
Well, Jared Leto is the definition of a mediocre white man.
We've all seen Morpheus.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I'm sure he's like, oh, and Jared Leto's just like, oh, well, I won an Oscar, so. But.
Yeah, well, you also wore that weird cat thing to.
But it was kind of or I wasn't. I think Katy Perry or someone else like turned around and saw him, and and they're like, oh my gosh.
Yeah, that was great.
Yeah.
Not
Katy Perry. Someone's like, it's this person, you idiot.
Emily D. Baker made a meme because you remember the lawyer that had the cat filter turned on? She did a side-by-side of that and Jared Leto in the cat suit. It's just like, I'm not actually a cat.
Oh.
I'll have to show you that later.
Oh, okay. I've never seen that.
A lawyer, he was on a Zoom call, like a Zoom hearing, and he was a boomer and he had the cat filter turned on and he couldn't get it turned off.
Oh, no.
He's like, I was trying to get it turned off. I'm not a cat. Anyway, back to the making of The Emperor's New Groove. There's probably a segue in there about Yzma turning into a cat, but I'm too tired to make it.
I'll take that.
Han says, you put Mark with Randy for Dave Reynolds. With all those guys, it was probably the funniest writer's room you could possibly have. A table of people who had nothing to lose. I like how we just keep coming back to that. We had nothing to lose, you guys.
We had a year.
We recognized two things were really working well from Kingdom of the Sun. David Spade is Kuzco, and Eartha Kitt is Yzma. What if we just started with those two things? Just hold on to those two things and build from that. I suggested we come up with a different character than the Pacha that was in Kingdom of the Sun. What's the opposite of David Spade's Kuzco? I imagined an older character, a bigger, heavier character, a family man who took responsibility seriously, a selfless character. And I remember drawing this big sort of mountain of a dude sitting on a little hill with a llama and saying, this is Pacha, and I think it could work. That's wholesome, but also, why did Owen Wilson get to be? I thought he was had to, which could still be true, because by the time they did things, I thought he just had to drop out because, like, scheduling stuff. Are you telling me they were like, he's not an idiot anymore, so we can't let Owen Wilson be the character? I now feel bad for the director who didn't get to direct and Owen Wilson. I'm feeling bad for everybody right now.
Well, or hopefully Owen Wilson is like, I'm in Marvel now. Everything's fine.
He's Lightning McQueen. He's fine. He's
Lightning
fine. He turned out fine, but I feel bad.
Speed. I am Speed.
Miller Zarnecki says that brainstorm of having Pacha be the father figure that Kuzco never had. Once they came up with that, it was like, well, who would be an amazing father figure you'd want to have? John Goodman. I don't remember them talking seriously about anybody else. It's fair. They needed him to be older instead of like, they started out as being like two characters about the same age switching places, and then they needed one to be like the father to the other one. That makes sense. I get what they're going for, and John Goodman did great. He's also Sully, so
Oh, Sully.
I don't think John Goodman lets them make movies without him, honestly. John Goodman is in so many things. Have you ever looked up his credits?
I have not.
Hundreds upon hundreds of things.
Huh.
I can't remember whether I'd worked with Disney yet or not, says John Goodman. They had all the storyboards set up and the character sketches and models and told me the guy what the guy was about. I thought I'd be working with David Spade. That was one of the draws. We did a couple sketches on SNL together, and I think he's brilliant, but I don't remember going in with him at all. It was just isolated. I would have I would have liked to meet Eartha Kitt. I dug her. He never met Eartha Kitt.
He never met Eartha Kitt. No.
At least at the time of making this. I don't know when this interview was given, but yeah, he never met her.
That's so sad.
You made a movie with Eartha Kitt. You didn't get to meet her.
Oh gosh.
I also love that he's like, I don't remember if I worked for Disney or not yet. I've worked for Disney so many times. Who's to say when it all started? Dindal says, Yzma's always kind of grew out of Eartha's wonderful personality. I remember thinking when we were first going to pitch the new idea, I wonder if she'll think this is too silly or just nonsense and ridiculous. We had the scene where they go down to the secret lab on a storyboard in the story room. I was going to walk her through this new, more broadly comedic direction. So I'm pitching. I'm doing all the voices of the characters and dialogues written under the boards. 5 or 6 panels in, she starts reading the dialogue for Yzma. She instantly locked in. Nothing like that has ever happened to me with an actor. She just was like, oh yeah, I get it. She's evil and she has a secret lab. Got you. I don't need the voices. I got it. I can do the voice. I am the voice.
I am Yzma.
Yes. She was just a boss babe her whole life. We love her. Aller says, I could never believe the energy in that woman. How old she was when we were working together. How old was she when we were working together? She would come into the recording booth and do these stretches, stretching her leg up over her head like a dancer does. And she had this unpredictable way of reading lines. If you already had an idea of how you thought the line was supposed to go, you forgot about it. It was better to just see what kind of crazy interpretation she'd come up with. How are they insulting everybody on this movie? Somehow he was trying to talk about how great Eartha Kitt was, and he was like, how old was she when we were working on that thing?
Yeah.
You don't say it out loud.
Maybe he's like, no, I was saying she's mature, but then you're implying that she's old. I don't know. Never mind. He was trying to insult everybody. Even the great Eartha.
The next part of the Vulture article is called 5. Let there be Kronk. Oh, here, you wanna do this? You wanna do this read for me? You can be Kronk.
Oh, I can't do Kronk. I'm sorry.
Would you rather be Yzma?
I'll be Yzma.
Okay.
Okay. So, is everything ready for tonight?
Oh yeah, I thought we'd start off with the soup and a light salad, and then see how we feel after that.
Not the dinner, you know.
Oh right, the poison for Cusco, the poison chosen especially to kill Cusco's poison. That poison?
Yes, Kronk.
That
poison.
He has his oven mitts.
Oh, his little oven mitts.
When we were first starting out, Reynolds says, Chris Williams had this really funny storyboard where Pacha is going down the line of these big soldiers, and he comes past this guy and goes, hey, what's your deal? And Chris just starts riffing that the guy goes, my deal? And he pulls up his shirt, and he's got an 18-pack, a washboard. He goes, I do 1,000 crunches a day. That's my deal. Williams says, I'd seen the Steve Martin movie Roxanne. That guy, the fireman. I think the actor's name is Rick Rossovich. He also gets beat up by the Terminator. Poor Rick Rossovich probably doesn't know what a huge influence he was on Kronk.
Oh gosh.
Oh, no. I had storyboards of the sample scene. The Emperor's guards were coming to kick people out of the town, and Pacha, at that point, was still a younger Pacha, went to confront the guards, and so this was apparently still allegedly Owen Wilson Pacha. He gets to be the younger Pacha? I'm trying to make this better for everybody.
What is the age difference between Owen Wilson and John Goodman where they're like the younger Pacha?
I mean, at the time, in the time that they were filming this, I don't think if Owen Wilson was right off Bottle Rocket, he was probably still in his 20s or early 30s.
Oh, okay.
And John Goodman was probably at least in his 40s by that point, so enough of an age difference for it to matter to them, I guess. Although Owen Wilson has always had dad vibes to me, like even when he was just like, I'm Owen Wilson and I'm doing all like the buddy comedy, like in my younger days stuff, he just always had dad vibes to me. So I think it could have still worked.
Dad vibes or daddy vibes?
Dad vibes, but if you want to go there.
A father vibe, you weirdo.
A father vibe.
Wow.
But you know, can't take that away from Owen Wilson. He can have daddy vibes if he wants to.
I'm sure someone somewhere is like, yes, he does. I knew it.
There's oh my god. Sorry, Spencer. There's so many tangents in this one.
Sorry,
what else is
Spencer.
new? We're only at an hour and 22 minutes. We're fine.
Okay.
I've only got like a third of the article left to go. Anyway, Owen Wilson did one of those autocomplete interviews somewhat recently, where like last year, you know, where they show him like popular things. It's like, is Owen Wilson, and then the autofill thing.
Oh yeah.
One of them was Owen Wilson is daddy. And Owen Wilson just looks at the camera and is so and goes, like a father, like my father.
I hope they just stared at him and he's like, a father? Not a what's going on? Wow.
It was so funny. I had to pause the interview. I was laughing so. It's like, give him the Owen Wilson is daddy, guys. Come on.
Oh gosh, that just reminds me of the tweets that the Marvel actors read, and one of them, what Winston Duke read one, or Sebastian Stan read one that was like Bakugan or something like that. Spencer, cut that out. Spencer, cut that out right now. Please cut that out. Anyway, going back to Owen Wilson's pot show, confronting the guards.
All right, we've established that Owen Wilson is hot and he should have been Pacho. What else? What are we moving on from? One of my family members probably just heard that out of context and is very confused. I saw sorry, you can cut this out, Spencer. I saw a thing that was like, as a kid, I had a crush on the cowboy in in Night at the Museum, and now as an adult, I have a crush on Mobius from Loki, and I'm realizing I just have a crush on Owen Wilson, and it's been constant my entire.
Wow.
This conversation is just reminding me of that. Spencer's gonna keep all of that in just to hang us all out to dry.
No.
Patrick Warburton, who was Kronk, for anybody who didn't know, says, I remember thinking to myself, I can't do the voice. When I was looking at someone of this dialogue, Kronk, is he an ogre, a giant, a robot, a monster? I'm not really sure. Oh, Kronk is a person. Okay, well, I was able to decipher that he was a henchman, but something of a reticent henchman, not so aggressive or nasty. He liked to cook. And I thought, well, okay, he's not deep and gravelly. As an actor, you're always looking for different options. I went with one that was just thought, I brought this voice, speaks in a whispery Kronk voice. Right down here, a little more whispery. And he got voice breaks, excited about stuff. There's something excited about stuff. I'm trying to remember because I saw this was an on-camera thing at a con. I can't remember exactly, but he's like, there's something kind of sweet about that. I like how he says it as if it's not just his voice. But he did put thought into it. He thought a lot about how he was just like, this man loves his spinach puffs, okay, you guys? Reynolds says, I remember someone said, well, we don't really need that character. And I go, wait, the guy next to Yzma? Yeah, no, his name's Kronk. Chris calls him Kronk, and I think he could be really funny. And they go, yeah, we don't need him. And I said, through desperation, let me write a scene and let's just see. I have no clue what we saw in just that one scene where he shows his abs, which is not going in the movie. I just have a voice in my head and the look of a guy, and somehow we just came up with the idea. Let's just write a dinner party scene. A dinner party scene where they poison Cusco.
Oh, side note, I remember watching that scene, and when Yzma throws the poison on the cactus. Later in the scene, you can see the cactus has turned into a llama. And I'm just like...
So cute. I love it so much. It's so smart. They thought about every little bit of this movie, which is amazing because they only had a year to think about it.
Oh, wow. Again, letting the writers do their jobs and not trying to break the creativity.
Reynolds says, I go home. I'm sitting there. I start with Yzma. You find a line to get you in. And hopefully the rest will come. I go, is everything ready for tonight? And then I go, I think we'll start with a soup and a light salad and see how we feel after that. And I just thought, holy shit, it's all about the dinner, not the poison for him. I give it to Mark, and he's laughing. He takes one little couplet out and gives it to Chris Williams, and Chris Williams boards it. He adds the little bit at the end about dessert and coffee. Okay, it's just certain coffee. And then we kill him! Something to that effect. Because again, we're all in the same comedy mindset. A week later, we pitch it, Tom and Peter, and they're laughing. Peter Snyder goes, oh my god, he's worried about the dinner? At the end of it, Tom Schumacher turns to me and goes, looks like you saved your character. Yes, they did. And I own a t-shirt that says Cooking with Kronk because of this man. That man is my hero.
Thank you.
Thank you for saving Kronk. And Wharton was like hitting a home run every single time he opened his mouth because he understood Kronk. Mark had this idea. I was thinking that when Kronk was running with the bag, he'd have his own theme music in his head, but he would sing it out loud, like when you were a kid and you were running around, and Warburton just goes, I got you, here we go. And he did the theme music. Yeah. Warburton says, my own theme song, Kronk's theme song. I improvised that. Good for him. Love that.
It's always great when you can have one take of something and just be like, okay, moving on.
Got it. Moving on. Check the gate. Gates are good. Moving on. Wortman says, Earth and I had actually worked together before that. We did some horrible movies in South Africa back in 1985. Apparently, for those wondering, the movies are called Dragonard and Master of Dragonard Hill. There was a sequel.
Oh, okay.
Oliver Reed was the villain. Eartha Kitt ran the bordello. I'm the one white slave. Hang on, I didn't read this far in the thing. I have questions. You can cut that out, Spencer.
Spencer, please cut that out.
Holy shit. Okay, Spencer, cut this out. But he says, and it's one of those exploitation type films. So once they got me up on the blocks, of course, the women have their husbands there, and they're twirling their parasols. Like, darling, I want that one. You can cut that out, Spencer, but apparently this is a real movie that they did, and then the movie got a sequel.
Tina voice activate.
Again, we're not saying any of that is okay. We're just saying this is a real movie, and Patrick Warburton was talking about how they made it and it was horrible, and then there was a sequel. So I don't even think Patrick Warburton's okay with this.
Well, luckily, Patrick Warburton and Eartha Kitt got to come back together again to be Kronk and Yzma.
He goes on to say, Oliver Reed, who would sometimes start with a little bit of whiskey at 10 in the morning, is really the only watchable thing in the movies. I can imagine. Maybe we can keep this in. Maybe everybody will be confused with us.
Yeah, I just like, what? Someone's going to research this movie and be like, no, you guys, you have to understand this. And then we'll be like, what?
I mean, it can't, well, I shouldn't say that because it always can be worse. But I mean, I covered a movie with Anton on the channel last Christmas about Santa needing the help of children to be rescued from warlords in Africa. It's an actual movie, and it's called I Believe in Santa Claus, and it was made in the 80s. And it is the scariest Christmas movie that I have ever seen.
The 80s was a wild time.
And it was French, too, so, like, France in the 80s was wild.
Oh, I haven't seen any French 80s movies. Bonjour, Santa Claus? Oui. C'est moi.
Yeah, that's almost exactly a line. I don't think you believe me, but that is literally almost just a line from the movie.
I'll take your word for it.
I know you won't believe me, it's fine.
Well, I do, but I just don't want to watch the movie. I don't know.
Yeah, but Warburton says the director was relegated to doing crappy movies like ours because they couldn't ensure a major production with him at the time. Finally, he garnered some trust, and they hired him for Gladiator.
Oh.
And he died making Gladiator drunk in a bar on the island of Malta. I think he was arm wrestling a rugby team. Patrick Warburton has a way with storytelling.
I'm so happy I'm here. This is wild. And we're creating, this is probably how they felt after reading about Emperor's New Groove.
I forget what we said about cutting it. You have to keep this all.
Never mind, Spencer. And Spencer's probably gonna be like, but I just cut that out. But
don't do it. You know better than to listen to us when we say to cut things out.
well, now he's gonna be like, here's all the stuff that I cut out before, and we're like, no. Oh no, the time I said that embarrassing thing.
Patrick Warburton goes on to say, I might have one of those details wrong. It cost them millions of dollars in post. Okay, this part does need to be rectified. This wasn't the director he was talking about. This was one of the actors.
In Gladiator, he was wrestling. Oh my. Okay. So he was arm wrestling a rugby team while drunk in a bar, and things happen. Oh.
I'm not laughing that the guy died. I'm really not laughing about that. I'm just the way that Patrick Warburton just sticks that landing at the end of his story.
I just like, oh, you know, this person, he worked with crappy films, da 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 da. Someone's unalive.
What?
Wow.
Oh my god. Oh, this is Patrick Warburton in the movie. Look at him. Little baby Patrick Warburton.
Oh.
I know.
Okay.
Hello.
Oh.
Hello, Patrick.
Hello. I don't know if he's a himbo in that movie, but hello, himbo Patrick Warburton.
He kind of looks like Zac Efron in this picture.
Can I see it again, please? He dies. Oh my gosh! I feel like he could sing High School Musical. Bet on it.
I'm gonna need to send this whole article to Spencer because he needs to put this picture on screen. He looks like Zac Efron, you guys. To the point where I'm like, why didn't he play Zac Efron's character in 17 again? He could have been the older. Nothing against Matthew Perry, but he looks like Zac Efron.
And it would have been funny because he would have had pictures of himself when he was younger, and Zac Efron would have looked at him and been like,
That's
"Yeah,"
me.
or he's
Yeah.
like, or he would be confused because he's like, "Wait, that looks like me, but that's not me." But
we might need to put Patrick Warburton next to Owen Wilson on our daddy list.
or we create a tier list of maybe he could be one step above. No.
They can be tied. It doesn't need to be competition.
Okay, fine. We won't put him in competition. The competition of daddies. Now I'm sure. Now it's like, well, maybe the movie can't be that. And I'm like, no. Remember what Avery said about the description earlier? But handsome Patrick Warburton.
God, people are going to be like, do a podcast about those movies.
No.
I bet those movies were seamless to film. Okay, we're up to part 6. Meanwhile, you know what part 6 is called? Meanwhile, remember Sting?
Oh no. I remember now.
Wait, what did the part about that movie have to do? Just that they work together? Hang on.
I think he was talking about the director who worked with Gladiator and someone unalived while at a bar.
There's an extra thing. Hang on, before we go to
okay.
But what's really funny is after we'd done those films, Eartha was performing at Roosevelt Hotel. I went to see her perform. She invites me up to her room and excuses her butler, because of course she has a butler.
Of course, Eartha
Patrick Warburton has had a wild life, by the way. I just want to do a podcast about Patrick Warburton now. We're just sitting there. I'm on one end of the couch, and Eartha's on the other end, and she's petting this furry creature, this animal. I can't tell if it's a dog or a cat. I'm 22-year-old kid at the other end of the couch, while Eartha Kit, we're worlds apart. I looked at Kronk and Yzma and said, oh my god, art has just copied reality here. I just thought back to me and Eartha 15 years before. That's so wholesome. Also, that's the most Eartha Kit thing I can possibly think of. She's just petting a maybe cat. We don't know.
A maybe cat somewhere in a hotel.
She's like, you're off.
Yes, my butler. You can leave for now.
In my head, the butler has the name of, in Model Land, Nars.
Nars. Or in that, Nars, come quickly. There's an intruder in my ooh-ah. Sorry, that was really loud.
Eartha Kit would never. Eartha Kit would never be the belladonna. Anyway.
She's too good to be the belladonna.
So yeah, meanwhile, part 6 is remember Sting.
Oh no.
Sting's like, I got all these great songs, you guys, and they're just like, who are you?
Honey, prepare the Stonehenge. Okay, I'm back.
Stonehenge was built by Sting's ancestors when they got fired from stuff.
And he has to rebuild it back to its normal spot every time he...
They're throwing the stones. The locals say you can still hear the crash of the stones coming down. Oh no, that's just Sting. They fired him off of the next Disney movie again.
And it's a continuous thing. You're like, all right, gotta put this back up.
His wife is just like, Sting, what did we say? To not to, and he's just putting them in.
Oh, Sting, it's all right. Don't worry, this documentary will make everything worth it.
No. As the years wore on, it says Sting, who had originally signed up for what he assumed would be a 2-year gig, was starting to get frustrated. They're 4 years into their starting from scratch.
Please tell me they were paying him.
I'm sure Sting got his money.
The check cleared. Woo.
The epic musical he invented was no more, replaced by a goofy movie he was a lot less interested in, but the production was determined to keep him on board. Han says Sting was a real... I don't know if you can say that word.
Is it the C word?
No. It's this word. Do we say this word?
Oh, that's a Jewish thing.
Yeah, I don't know if we can say that word.
Can I say that word?
You're Jewish, but...
Here, hold on. I'm going to Google. Spencer, cut this out. Do I type in, can we say that word? Can we say, and is a...
Well, if you're Googling, I'm not going to say it.
Can I swear we can say it, but I don't know if it's like just a Jewish thing. A decent, upright, mature, and responsible person.
Okay.
And it's a Yiddish word.
Okay.
So I'm gonna say he's a mensch.
Okay.
Cancelled.
Usually when people start inserting Yiddish words, then when you're not Yiddish, it can go either way. It's either really wholesome or really bad, and I didn't know.
Oh, so I'm like, oh, you little mashugana, but Spencer just bleeps it out. It's just like, no.
Ooh. Anyway, moving on. This is about the Emperor's New Groove.
Shalom.
He sent a nice letter saying, "I didn't sign up for this. Good luck." Randy was going to let him resign. He was like, "Okay, talk to him next week and we'll send you the new assignment." Sting would say, "No, you don't understand." Randy would say, Randy and Mark were persistent about keeping him involved. In the end, he had some really great work in the movie, but I think it's a difficult memory for him because he wanted to do what Elton John did in The Lion King.
Now I really want to do the scene from The Lion King where it's like, ooh, wow, if you're ready for some, I don't know the words, when it's like, what do you want me to do? Put on a skirt and do the hula? Wow. But yeah.
It's just, he was trying to quit so nicely, and they were like, "So we'll talk to you on Monday," and he was like, "No, please, you don't understand."
I'm leaving, so we'll see you on Monday. You just see Mickey Mouse like coming from the shadows. Oh, it's not Hootie.
Hiya, pal.
Fulmer says, "It was a bumpy ride. He quit about 5 times. I talked him into saying 5 times." Dindal says, all the very difficult things ended up Randy's job, bless him. He did what a producer is supposed to do, which is to shield the creative. He did what he was supposed to do. He kept Sting locked in a basement and only fed him saltine crackers and water, but we got the movie done.
You can't go into your mansion, but you can destroy Stonehenge as long as you rebuild it to get that anger out.
Everybody, Sting is on house arrest until Kingdom of the Sun, which is now called The Emperor's New Groove, comes out. Sting liked Kingdom of the Sun. You can see it in the documentary where Tom and Peter are ripping it apart, and Sting is saying, "Well, I kind of like it." He likes the different elements and the complexity. But by the time we got to Emperor's New Groove, I remember talking about it, and he said, yeah, I mean, that's all good. I'm not against any of that, but it's just not a big idea. He wanted a big movie. He wanted to see characters sitting in singing his songs. The very end song he did over the end credits was beautiful, but he was disappointed that there weren't characters singing the song. So here's the thing. All my life, you have this fun Emperor's New Groove, whatever, and then you get to the end lyrics, and it's just this, like, low downbeat. It's a beautiful song, but it's definitely a different tone than the entire movie that you just saw before, and I always was like, why did they write that song for the end? And the truth is, we now know, it was written for a different movie, and they were like, "Sting, can we still put this right here?" And he's like, "Over the credits? Okay, I guess. Do you want to hear that other song I had for Yzma again?" And they just pat him on the hand and they go, "Sure, buddy."
Sure, buddy. We'll put it in the final cut. It's I'm just look at the flowers, Lizzie. Look at the flowers.
And then they go, "Hey, Sting, buddy, I know this is tough on you, but what are your thoughts on Tom Jones?" Poor Sting.
I just can't imagine. What I want to know are producers should take notes, because it's like, oh, see, that's how you, or I want to take notes from producers. It's like, how do you convince someone who wrote music for an entirely different movie to stay on to this movie that they've quit on several times?
You lock him in the basement and you only give him saltine crackers and water. I just told
Oh, okay. He was playing Chubby Bunnies with crackers. He was so bored.
No.
Then he was like, that was a stupid idea. Who thought of that?
No one will let me call my wife.
And she's like, I'm right here, sweetie. I'm filming you in the basement. Mickey comes in and he's like, you better delete that. Yep. I'm learning so many new things today.
I didn't read this far. I read halfway through. I read to the part where they said it was great. They left us alone. And I was like, I got to tell Gabe, this should be a podcast episode.
And now we're just in newfangled territory.
Okay, Han says, I now feel, as this article goes on, I feel less bad about just quoting the article because they're just quoting other people. You know, in a way, they're kind of just ripping off the people that gave them the interviews.
Yeah.
I don't even know that they gave interviews for this thing. They might have just been taking from other interviews, which is research. I'm not saying they did bad work. I'm saying thank you for your work. I am now piggybacking off of your work and doing less work.
Sorry, Spencer, I punched the mic as I went to get my thumbs up, my angry thumbs up.
I got my hair caught in my seat, so right at the same time we were both like, oh dear, Spencer, cut that out. All right, so Han says, I remember going to Sting's house in Malibu with Mark and Randy, the three of us. We had to stop and get gas at a station beforehand. Sting's house was one of those houses in the colony right on the ocean, and there was a camera crew there. They missed our entrance, so we had to do our entrance twice. We came in and hugged Sting and said, oh, it's so good to see you. And then we had to do it again. Sting's longtime agent was there, just a very high-pressure meeting. Afterwards, we went back to the same gas station because we had been so nervous we couldn't go to the bathroom in Sting's house. We all left and we were driving away. Someone said, I've got to pee really badly. Yeah, so do I. We all got to this bathroom and released large amounts of urine. That's the exact quote. We all go into this bathroom and release large amounts of urine. I can't even read it. It's just such a strange sentence.
Sting is just like, where did they go? This is totally a fake house. I need to go back to my Stonehenge. Sting, you can't go back until you're done.
Part 7 is called, How Do You Improvise an Animated Film? I guess they found out, didn't they?
Yeah, yep.
This is quoting the article directly now. Since the earliest days of Walt Disney himself, Disney movies were always elegant, deliberate, detailed affairs, with each animated frame revealing the years of work that often went into a film. So what happens when the studio bets on a more off-the-cuff go-for-broke humor? Reynolds says, during recording sessions, Mark and I have a system where I pitch into Mark's ear, like Mark's on the floor with the talent, I'm behind the glass. Dindal says, I wore a set of headphones, and I was in contact with Dave Reynolds. I only could hear him. He'd say, how about this line? How about that line? Let's tweak it this way. So improv skills were coming into use. Spade said, they let you goof around and say, do this, do more of that. Yeah, have fun with that. That's what it's really fun, because I don't really know the whole movie. I was just not wanting to be embarrassed because I didn't hear anyone else's parts. So none of them are working off anybody else, and none of them really know what they're doing anymore. They're just like, oh, okay. Do you think they were confused when they saw the final movie, or do you think they were like, oh, I get it now?
I'm sure I get it now. I get to hear their dialogue, too.
It makes so much more sense now that I hear Kronk yelling about spinach puffs.
Why are we talking about spinach puffs? And they're poisoning me? I'm just sitting... Or... I drink the drink and then faceplant. What happened?
Yeah, like Sebastian Stan talking about how the Russos wouldn't tell him that he was being Thanos snapped when he got snapped. So they were just like, so you're here and then you're just on the ground. And he's like, am I dying? You're just here and then you're on the ground.
they're and everyone's just staring at Tom Holland and Mark Ruffalo like, this is your fault. You've leaked so many things. We don't know what we're doing.
I didn't hear anyone else's parts. I just knew that I was doing mine out of sequence and rambling so much and throwing in so many throwaway jokes. I was just hoping some of it would stay in. He didn't want to go the way of the first director and Sting. Oh no. Reynolds says, the thing with Spade was trying to get him to stop improvising. He's a comedian, so he'd think of a hilarious line that were like calls out to George Bush or Michael Jackson. We're like, no, this is timeless. No references. They're like, we already did that with Aladdin. All the 90s references. Spade says, I think they got sick of me by the end because it was just forever. They kept bringing me, and I kept saying, I thought it was over. And they'd go, no, you gotta do this. And I was frustrated going, am I bad? This movie is not ending. By the end of it, I was just hoping it would be okay. I was really telling everyone I was gonna be in a Disney movie. Oh.
I'm just imagining he just has like a page, and they're like, do this, and it's like, okay, hopefully I can remember all that. Let me improv. No improv.
Let's always do this, David. Do that, David. Does anybody want to know what I want?
I want to make George Bush jokes.
I want to talk about how George Bush sucks. That would have been funny.
Everyone's just like, why is there a Bush named George? And it's like, no. It's why is there a person whose last name is Bush? They were named after a shrubbery?
Goodman says, it wore me out. I don't want to sound whiny. It's not like laying brick or anything, but just sustaining energy was a challenge. He's like, I know I'm an actor, and nobody really has any sympathy for me. But also, you don't understand what I've been through. You have no idea where I've been.
You go to bed at night, you lay there, and you take responsibility for yourself.
I put my whole body into it when I do animation, and it gets a little tiring after a while. Plus, I think I was still smoking, so that couldn't have helped. They tape you, so they know what kind of faces I'm pulling. That's pretty smart, because they can draw your dialogue around it. He's like, I'm still smoking, and I was just so tired.
Cusco kind of sounded like this a little bit.
Oh, no, this is John Goodman.
Oh, John Goodman.
Pacha.
Cusco, what are you doing? We need to save my family.
They're like, this is very different from Owen Wilson's drawly, nice Southern accent. That man's really a daddy.
And Patrick Warburton is like, but I'm the daddy.
Spade says they film you to see if they can figure out a way to get the face to look a little like yours and the expressions, things you do with it. So you ham it up a bit. And Han says, this is a terrible thing they tell you, and you don't necessarily need to print this. But they did. But David Spade would always do better if we had the lights there and the camera crew. Even if it wasn't a real camera crew, the recording stage is kind of dark and dim. It's like a music recording stage. He's there with the microphone. He just didn't have energy. Then we would turn on some shooting lights, and he'd have a video camera. So he had somebody to perform too. I think when you're a stand-up comic and you're looking for a reaction, you benefit from having those lights and knowing you're on. Eddie Murphy was the same way. So they were just, to my understanding, they didn't need his face anymore. But they knew that he performed better when they brought in the camera, so they just had a random camera and lights. So we're like, yeah, just turn a couple lights on and tell him you're rolling. He'll do better, trust me.
I mean, whatever works. And I'm sure Miss Sting is just like, well, I was there with the documentary crew. And it's just like,
oh my God. Watch, Mrs. Sting is like from New Jersey this whole time. We're just assuming that she's
She talks like Michelle Visage from RuPaul's Drag Race.
Part 8 says, this quickly became a movie where a trampoline salesman makes sense. I forgot about the trampoline salesman. I just remembered right now.
Yeah, and I'm just like, wait, how does that fit into everything?
For the last time, we did not order a giant trampoline. You know, pal, you could have told me that before I set it up.
Miller Zanecki says, Mark and Randy knew how to bring out the best in people. It was a healing process, I think, really. I can't name someone who didn't have a good time working on this show once we finally figured out what the show was. Dindle says, if it was an hour story meeting, sometimes for 45 minutes, we'd laugh and tell stories. If you walk into the room, you'd think, what are we paying these people for? And then the last 15 minutes, we'd really lock in. I didn't think like we're just goofing around. This is part of the process. Anderson says, as documented in The Sweat Box, I really want to see it now. Someone send me a link. I know it's out there somewhere. Meetings oftentimes would turn into things like chair races. There was a big table in the middle of the room, but then the periphery was sort of open, so you would take the chairs and with wheels on it with your feet, and you would scoot yourself backwards around the table, and you'd be racing somebody. Artists at work.
Yeah.
Miller Zernecki. I was like the dead mother, younger than a lot of them, but still on the one calling people back in. Okay, guys, the board is over there. Let's go back to that. I want to say, and I've never worked on anything a fraction of as big as a Disney project, but this reminds me of, and Spencer, you can cut this out if you think Andrew's going to kill me too much for telling this story. When we were writing Marley's Angels, which we wrote in 2 days, and then less than a month later, we filmed it.
Oh, that's a great feat.
We had 3 weeks and change from the time that we were like, this is what we want to make, to wrapping all of you guys out. I don't think I ever told you that. But Andrew and I wrote it together, a majority of it in 1 day, and Andrew had an ulcer at the time.
Oh, no!
He still had an ulcer while we were filming. I don't know that he told you guys that either.
He didn't. Oh, no.
That's part of the you can cut this out, Spencer. That's part of the reason he was only eating vegetables.
That's what
fruits.
I was wondering. I was like, why is he eating a pepper?
It's because that's all he was sustaining himself on, because he had an ulcer.
Oh. I want to give him a hug now.
Yeah, but anyway, shout out Andrew.
Shout out Andrew. But he would probably hug Spencer first, because Spencer's everyone's favorite.
So Andrew, who is, if you don't know, my writing partner for Seldom Science, he had an ulcer, and I had really bad period cramps at the same time. So we both just had heating pads, and we're like, what if Marley did this then? Okay, that sounds good. And I just thought of that when I thought of, like, artists at work. We're such a refined breed.
Oh gosh, you're in so much pain, and you create the 30-minute masterpiece.
Yeah.
That is Marley's Angels.
Masterpieces. A word, an inaccurate word, but it's a word that I appreciate.
Well, I was just happy you included me, and you were just like, what's a character we can write for Gabe? And I was just like, oh.
That character evolved so much once we knew that we wanted you to do it, because that character was supposed to have, like, no lines.
Oh.
He was supposed to be a character that he's just the collection guy, that the door gets shut in his face, and then we were like, but we have to give Gabe's gonna have so much fun with, and he's gonna do good with that character. Give him more lines.
Yay! And I just think it's great that you kept in the I'm Jewish, Mazel Tov.
We were like, that's staying. End of the movie. There you go. There was like 1 second where we were like, we might have to cut it, and we looked at each other and we went, no. That was our saving Kronk moment.
Yay! That was the dinner scene.
Yes. Miller Zernecki says, I was like the den mother, younger than a lot of them, but still the one calling people back in. Okay, guys, board is over here. Let's get back to that. Dindle says, it was just the perfect dynamic of people. Years later, I saw John Cleese talk about Monty Python and creativity, and he spoke about how you have to get your brain in a place where it can be spontaneously funny. You can't just sit down and go, right, let's be funny. Reynolds says, our whole story, this is almost done, I swear. We've been talking for 2 hours. I'm sorry, Spencer.
You can always have a part 1 and part 2.
Nah, he'll be able to cut this down. Podcasts can be long.
Oh, okay.
They're watching this while they're jogging. Or pretending to do work. We see you guys. We appreciate you guys. Yay.
I don't know why I did that. Spencer, please censor this.
Reynolds, our whole story crew became like one brain. We were talking about the opening song that we were going to do. They're trying to think of somebody who can sing it. I live in LA and I'm driving into Disney and I hear Tom Jones on something and I think, Tom Jones should sing the song. I have to remember that. I drive in. I come in. I go, Mark, I gotta tell you something. I know who's gonna sing the song. And he goes, who? We had an idea. And I go, who? And he said, Tom Jones. And I said, Tom Jones. And all of a sudden, a third person goes in and goes, hey, have you guys thought of Tom Jones for that song? Kind of like a Vegas thing. I have a feeling they really wanted Tom Jones.
I think so.
Just 3 people in a room. Tom Jones!
Tom Jones is like somewhere just being like, what?
He can hear them calling him. It's like a bat signal.
I can hear the singing. I need to go.
Because everything begins and ends with, hey, go. Story rooms sometimes will pitch ideas almost as a joke, and then someone else goes, that's funny, but what are we really gonna do? This was the only movie I worked on where someone pitched an idea like that, and we went, let's use that. Like Yzma, who's been turned into a kitten, falling into the tower where we're like, how are we gonna get her back up? She's not going to Splat. I don't remember if it was Dave or Don Hall, another story artist who's become a director since, said, what if there was a trampoline salesman at the bottom and she has that and she hits that and bounces back up, and we said, oh yeah, that's what it should be. You can't imagine a story session in Bambi where somebody says that they quickly become a movie where a trampoline salesman makes sense.
Oh, okay, we've come full circle.
Yes, this is just loop-de-loops of circles. They did a good job on this article. Go and read the whole article, because I'm obviously not literally reading it word for word. I'm just mostly working off of the quotes from people who work there. At one point during the middle of the story meeting, Randy came in and said, okay, Disney ESPN is doing a promotion, and they're going to start showing the World Double Dutch Jump Roping Championship. So if you could work jump roping into the movie, that would be fantastic. And we went, yeah, no problem, no problem. And he walks out, and we're all like, jump rope? But I go, look at the movie we have. Of course we can figure out jump roping. And then all of a sudden, in literally 3 minutes, we had Kronk jump roping.
I love that scene. So what are 10 little monkeys jumping on the bed? One fell off and bust his head.
Kronk!
Oh, let us out now, or we'll burn your house to the ground. Well, which one is it? That's like a very something article. Fine, let us out, or we'll burn your house to the ground.
I love that Kronk's, or that Pacha's family gets to be so capable. The kids and the mom, they're all just like, they're holding down that fort without even batting an eye.
He's like, I have to go, and she's like, I got you.
We had this whole version where Pacha takes Cusco up to the top of a mountain. He comes up with this idea. What if we keep him here as the talking llama? He'll get to know the people and won't go to displace them. So Pacha, John Goodman, says to all the villagers, listen, this llama thinks he's the emperor. Just play along. So Cusco's walking around going, I'm your emperor. And everybody goes, yes, sire. We actually had Adam West come in and play a part. He comes up and says, Your Highness, I know it's you. And he goes, the rebels are ready to help you escape. The thing is, Cusco finds that Adam West is crazy. His army is a bunch of scarecrows. But anyway, by the way,
That would have been... And, Scarecrows, he was Batman. Oh my gosh. Oh, that would have been hilarious.
The things that we're finding out on just like by the ways, as people tell the story of making this thing. I knew the story behind this movie was crazy. I didn't know how crazy. This is fantastic. I'm so glad I decided to make the podcast this.
Yes, thank you, Avery.
Because with MILF Manor on the table, I really was like, what could possibly... I'm really going to have to fill some big shoes if it's not going to be MILF Manor.
Yeah. Oh, gosh. We need to find, like, one random article that's behind the scenes of that.
Oh, God. I'll do some digging, because we've got a week. We might have to finish watching it next week before we start filming.
Yeah, just kind of...
But that's okay.
Research.
That's fine. Adam West's character said, when I see you, I'll call you. And the call was like... The whip poor will sound.
Oh,
right?
the whippoorwill. It's like whippoorwill.
Oh,
it's a bird.
Okay. I'm caught up. Sorry, I don't know birds. I have a mug that's not mine. It's Spencer's, and it's all the names of birds that have inappropriate sounding names. So it's like the whatever woodpecker and the blue-footed booby and the dickcissel. Like that's the extent of birds that I know.
Oh, there's I don't know. All
the
right.
tufted titmouse.
Yes, that's literally what I was gonna say.
On the bottom of the mug, it just says the tufted titmouse, and it just says tits.
Oh.
So you see it when you get down to the bottom of your drink. It's a great mug.
Oh my gosh.
Not sponsored, but also sponsor us. Weird bird dick mug.
Please sponsor us. We're hilarious. We can improv.
Okay, where was I? Then I said to Mark, wait a second. Have him say the word as if he's making a call. So Adam just went, can you do the whippoorwill sound?
Yeah, it's like...
So he did that, literally saying the word. That killed everybody. We ended up cutting the whole part of the movie, literally for our 5 months of story work gone. 5 months of story work gone!
Out of the year that they had left.
Why did they cut it? I mean, they had to cut it because they don't end up going up to the mountain. So they had to. But Adam, that would have been so funny, guys.
They could have had like a deleted scene kind of thing just to put that in there.
Yep. William says, at some point, I was like, my gosh, what can't be in this movie? I need to know. There was another meeting back when the idea was that Cusco would be trapped in the village, and he was meeting all these weird and interesting people. I was suggesting a pitch like, hey, what if we did a split screen, where you have him in all these different scenarios, and he's being overwhelmed? So there's a split screen into 2 frames and into 4, and then we'll just go 8 and 16. But what if we just keep doing split screens? Keep doing it until he's all these tiny little boxes. And I said, in one of the boxes, you put live action footage of the space shuttle taking off. I finally got in, I don't know. So I was like, okay, I think I know now the tonal limit.
Oh, okay.
He was like, I have to know how far I can go before they tell me no, because they just keep saying yes to everything.
Okay, live action space shuttle, no.
Fulmer says, I've only told this to a few people. Tom Schumacher did not come to my office ever, except one time, and he was almost crying, ready to lose it. And he said, I don't know if you know what you're doing or not, but I'm not going over across the street and telling Michael Eisner that we've spent $40 million and we have nothing to show. And he said, I'm begging on you guys to get something done because we've invested so much and we need something. No pressure.
No
Part
pressure.
9 is entitled, Oh, We Made That. Now I am just reading from the article because I have not read this far. The Emperor's New Groove turned out to be like no other Disney movie before. It really is. There's nothing else like it. And perhaps, understandably, the studio didn't really know what to do with it. Nevertheless, audiences 2000 found it, some in theaters, many, many more on home video. That's how I found it. We didn't see it in theaters. We were just like, there's this weird new movie about a llama, and David Spade's in it. And my mom went, David Spade, I love David Spade. And John Goodman, put it on. And then we always watched it. It inspired a straight-to-video sequel in 2005, and the Emmy-winning animated series from 2006 to 2008. I didn't know it won an Emmy. They won Emperor's New School won an Emmy.
Well, I mean, they had a lot more music in that, and so... And I remember Kronk's New Groove, and just being like, interesting.
Yeah, it was a movie. It sure was one of the movies of all time.
Just generic sentence.
Kingdom of the Sun became the movie that never was, an ambitious, magical project that now exists in its creator's dreams and in work-in-progress cuts buried deep in the Disney vaults. The Sweatbox, meanwhile, has become the finished movie Disney doesn't want you to see, transforming from what was supposed to be a promotional documentary to an intimate, hilarious, heartbreaking glimpse into what really happens behind the scenes of an animated project. I'm picturing, like, real-life Office, and that's why they didn't want it to get out. You know?
So, yes, there was that one time the Disney employee tried to start a fire, or tried to make a fake fire to try to have everyone do fire training, and one of the Disney employees threw her cat into the ceiling. It's fine.
Miller Zanaki said, I was still in that publicity / ancillary support role. So I was in the meetings with Counselor Products, Disney Interactive folks. We're super excited to put a game out, but we were like, is somebody going to make a Cusco plush? Tell me there's a llama. There's a stuffed llama somewhere. Come on. Yzma Kitty? So cute. Somebody? Come on. I think they did end up making them. If they didn't, they should have.
Maybe because of this podcast, they'll bring the plushies back.
Anderson, I believe it was a wrap party that was the first time I saw the finished film. It was a little bit of, oh, we made that. It's like a Looney Tunes cartoon more than a Disney cartoon in some respects, and even now, when I'm flipping channels or something and I see it on, I can't believe it. I remember finding it on TV, the scene of Yzma and Pacha's village, where she bursts out of the closet and she gets tarred and feathered and she's going down the hill and then becomes a piñata at the end. And I was like, I can't believe we got away with that. Somebody said they heard the leadership of the studio say, we'll never make that kind of movie again.
Oh.
Aller says, I didn't go to anything until the final screening for the studio before the wrap party. I remember seeing it on Grauman's Chinese theater. It was an exercise in letting go and appreciating what someone else has done. I could appreciate that their comic timing. Colin Stimpson was the art director, and when they changed it to being more lighthearted film, they pushed the design elements of the Incan architecture and made it way more extreme. The character designs were snappy. They had Joe Moisture, a wonderful character designer. I had just started working with him on Kingdom, but they kept him for Groove. Goodman says, I was just surprised that they actually put everything together and the whole was better than the sum of the parts. He's like, I didn't think this movie was going to come out, guys. Reynolds says, we opened horribly, like $9 million. We ended at $90 million. That was how much money it took to make this movie. Or, no. I think that's the amount of that's the amount of money that they made. I thought he was saying that's how much money they spent. That would have been like a Cats the Musical financial bath. Anyway, but they only started at 9 million. They ended up at 90 million. They had a multiplier of 10. Nobody has ever had a multiplier of 10. The Disney machine, which is massive, can market anything. But what is this thing? They couldn't promote it. Davidson says, they were some beautiful songs Eartha Kitt did. I think there's a sense of sadness that Roger had. And also Sting. Poor Sting.
Oh, poor Sting. My movie. My songs, my movie, my songs.
This work that you spent a lot of time perfecting actually doesn't get out there to the world. And Aller says, I mean, one of the songs, Snuff Out the Light, we were almost done with that in animation. Sometimes I just think, oh, just for curiosity's sake, we should just release it, just to show people the song with Eartha Kitt as the Yzma character. It's locked away in the archives somewhere. It kind of drives me crazy. But then down here, there's a link. Is this... Oh, it's storyboards. There's a piano. Hang on. I lost it. Go back. Please come back. It's a commercial. Hang on.
Oh. Well,
Sting really shredded on that one.
And Daddy was no dummy. Did outrageous things with the mummy.
It's just genuinely a good song.
It's so good.
What's your favorite Disney song? Snuff Out the Light? From Emperor's New Groove. But that's not...
that doesn't count. Yes, it does.
It's so good.
It is. I really wish that was available on iTunes.
So yeah, that's going to be one of the biggest losses to all of humanity.
Why? Snuff out the light. The enemy is the sun.
We love that. Spade says, I got to know Sting a little bit on SNL, and then Trudy and Sting. Trudy is Mrs. Sting.
Oh.
Trudy and Sting I knew throughout the years. One day she said, do you know how crazy that whole story was? I didn't see the documentary. They told me a little bit about it. It sounds interesting. You've got Sting, one of the greatest of all time, and you've got the balls to throw his songs away, and then Trudy just happens to be filming. He really called it. He really called it. You have one of the best musicians of all time. You throw away his music while his wife has a camera on you. That's pretty hardcore. That's pretty metal, man. You gotta... Davidson says, I think all the people who do animation are fascinated by the sweat box because it's not your saccharine making of documentary. It gets into the sweat and the grit of it all. Disney owns the thing. We don't have any clout in terms of releasing it ourselves. I would love to have released it. It pops up online now and then the lawyers take it back immediately. Schneider says, so what we're saying is, if you see it, crawl that site on the Internet Archive, download it onto a Google Drive. I'm not saying you should do that. I'm just saying, I bet you somebody has done that.
Someone has a Google Drive and they're like, yes, my precious.
And it's Sting and his wife just being like,
in Stonehenge.
hey honey, what do you want to do tonight? Send the Disney lawyers off running. And then they just post it on YouTube. They sit back and they drink wine.
They're like, they can't follow the IP address. We're in Stonehenge. Be fools to try to do that. Drinking while talking at the same time. Anyway.
Sting, please stop releasing our intellectual property. And he's just drinking on top of Stonehenge. And they're like, please. And it's just like a lawyer, like in the full lawyer outfit, but he has no shoes on for some reason. I don't know why this is what my brain is picturing. Just, Sting, please.
It's like, well, you've taken your shoes off, which is a nice gesture, but no. But I like you. Come back and see me again.
No, see, the last time the guy had his shoes on, and Sting started throwing things at him and saying, "Not in my Christian Stonehenge."
and he's like, yes, well, you will come back for this is me like spinning the wine, like, yes, you'll come back and I'll think about it. You took your shoes off. You're the only one to respect my glorious Christian Stonehenge.
Oh God.
It's a very large wine glass.
It gets bigger every time the lawyer comes back.
I can drink all days, boys. Just come on.
Schneider says, I'm disappointed the Sweatbox didn't come out. No matter how good or bad we all come off on in it. I think it's an interesting movie. Disney Plus is just gobbling things up, so why not just put it out?
Have it up for like a month and then take it down.
Miller Zarnecki says, I swear they probably had 150 hours of footage. The access was unheard of. I think Disney was mortified, so they pretty much just buried the Sweatbox. They did let us do the Academy run in 2002. If someone sends me this movie, I will do a video about it. My video will be fair use, and Disney, I'll use little enough that Disney will not legally be able to do anything about it. I just want to get the information out to the masses about what's in it. I won't even use any clips. I'll just report back to you guys.
Or you'll just be like, in this clip, and it's just Patrick Warburton looking like Patrick Warburton looking like Zac-Efron, and you're like, I can't show it. But Patrick Warburton, everybody.
They screened in New York and screened in LA, but they didn't put any effort behind it. Why would you put it out with the DVD of Emperor's New Groove? Why wouldn't you put it out with the DVD? Because they're like, we don't want to look bad.
Oh no.
Han says, a couple of years ago, I did a ton of appearances. People would introduce me and they would say, he produced Beauty and the Beast, The Hunchback of Notre Dame, and The Lion King, and executive produced Emperor's New Groove. And that was the one that got the reaction. And William says, I've occasionally given talks about story or movies that I've worked on, and the audience usually has little reaction. I worked on Mulan, you get a buzz of reaction. Moana or Bolt or Big Hero 6 or whatever, you get some sort of little reaction from the audience. But the sound is different. The Emperor's New Groove, it's a smaller group of people, but there's more passion. It's my only cult movie. We knew it was not going to end up being the next Lion King as far as box office success, but even then, it was sort of thrilling. It was an energy that I never felt before, since I just watched the movie again last night, and I was thinking, this shouldn't exist. Reynolds says, this happened a week ago. My niece is working with somebody and they're on a Zoom call and they're small talking, and she saw a poster in the background or something and goes, "What's that?" And he goes, "Oh, it's my favorite movie, Emperor's New Groove." This guy she worked for, he says, "I have a whole Twitter page devoted to it." And she goes, "My uncle wrote it." And the guy, when he heard this, got up and walked around and couldn't take it. So I'm going to get Mark and we're going to Zoom with that guy next.
Oh, that would be amazing to just be like, I have an entire page dedicated to you. Oh, I know one of the writers or producers, and it's like,
it's sort of like when I get to tell people who love Bad Boys 2, that in Bad Boys 2, my grandparents designed the house that blows up at the end. Yeah.
Oh, that's so cool.
Yeah, they're mad about it because they spent like 2 years working on it, and then it just literally just got blown up. But I always get street credit, so thank you, Granddad. Thank you, Dan. I always get I can tell people, like, I worked on Stranger Things, I worked on whatever, I worked on Jungle Cruise. My grandparents designed the house that blows up at the end of Bad Boys 2. Somebody at a dinner party will just, like, walk out of a refrigerator and be like, what? Bad Boys 2, you say?
Oh, gosh, you gotta... Yeah, I tell so many people I'm in movies, and they're like, eh. But the only time I got a big reaction was like, I got to talk to Tom Holland. Well, he talked at me and I kind of responded, but then the second AD was like, everyone to their place. And I was just like, well, not like, more like,
I could literally never picture you getting into a fist fight with anybody. Not because you couldn't take them, just because you're too nice.
I'm just waiting for the person that makes me like explode.
You're like, give me a reason.
Give me a reason to explode. I'll do it, I swear.
Reynolds says, I'll tell you one other thing about this story nobody gets. One day, a friend of mine at the studio comes by pushing a 2-wheel cart. It had 3 or 4 legal boxes on it. He goes, okay, Reynolds, thanks for this. And I go, what's that? And he goes, this is the groove. these boxes, this is everything you've written. Anytime you write something and you hand it in, they stamp it and it goes into a box somewhere because Disney owns it. It's like the last scene in Raiders of the Lost Ark. Sometime later, the movie's out and a guy knocks on my office door and says, "Are you Dave Reynolds I'm from Archives. I just need the final script from Emperor's New Groove. They didn't send one down." And I go, "What's that?" And he goes, "The final draft, the whole final script." I go, "No script." And he goes, "There's no script. What are you talking about?" And I go, "We don't have a script. We never wrote a script. We just made the movie." And he goes, "You've got to have a script. Archives has to have a script." I don't know what to tell you. Tell them to go see the movie. It's in theaters right now. He goes, "You guys don't have bound pages?" I go, "Nope. We have no bound pages. There's 3 or 4 legal boxes. You can have all you want. I saw them the other day. They had a couple interns just take all the pages and put them into a document, and they wrote interstitials, and they slapped my name on it. That's the honest to God truth. The first and only draft of The Emperor's New Groove was handed in 2 weeks after the movie was in theaters." And that, dear listeners, is the end of the article.
Yay.
That was fantastic.
That was not where I thought this was going, but I'm so happy we got to that.
I know, right? When I told Gabe, I was like, "Have you heard the story of The Emperor's New Groove?" And he was like, "Should I? No." And your face said, "Should I have?"
What story? And now I have a plethora of knowledge.
I love finding the stories behind your favorite movies and how chaotic they were, because I feel like it gives us just like the little taste behind behind set and how chaotic it is.
And it's just like, oh, look at this great final product. I just want to give hugs to everyone involved and be like, it's okay.
Especially Sting and Owen Wilson.
Oh, poor.
And that director that didn't get to direct anything.
Who directed The Lion King. Side note, I think I could probably be wrong, and Spencer, please cut this out if I'm wrong. The Roger, I believe his name, he's married to Crystal Minkoff. I can't remember her last name, but she's on The Real Housewives of Beverly Hills, and he's on there a lot too. And he's like really nice, and everyone's like, "Oh, he's so nice and very supportive." And it's like,
oh,
yay.
The director that got fired?
Yes.
Aw, good for him.
Yeah, I just remember I listened to Watcher Cobbins and they're like, "Oh yes, the director of Lion King using that Lion King money and all that." And I'm just like, wait a second, I have a connection to Real Housewives of Beverly Hills.
We have made it back to Real Housewives of Beverly Hills.
Yay.
It's the Kevin Bacon of TV shows.
Oh gosh, 2 degrees from Kevin Bacon.
Oh,
or
boy.
6 degrees from Kevin Bacon, never mind.
They say most people who have worked in anything are only 2 degrees away. Like, you can get most people back to Kevin Bacon in 2 moves.
Oh, wow.
I know.
I want to say Anne Hathaway. But
we could play it off screen, but we just do it. We just do a podcast episode where we're just playing. We're just doing our own 6 degrees of separation, but we're not using like the IMDb or like we're just using like just the. Well, we're using IMDb, but we're not using any, like, well, who's this person? Because you can Google somebody and be like, what's their degree of separation? Like, we're not doing that. We're, like, longhand going, can I find a quicker way between Gabe and Kevin Bacon than Gabe can find?
Oh, gosh. Let's see. Which movies have I been in? How could that... Oh, no. Yes.
We'll save it for that podcast.
Or no. But I'm just like, I have one. Okay, we'll save it for the podcast.
Anyway.
But I can find a 2 degrees of separation. Anyway.
I think I could find 2 for me too. But I guess we'll have to see. But anyway, thank you guys for listening.
Thank you.
This has been a long story. Thank you for Vulture.
Thank you, Vulture.
I'm sorry I just lifted your article, but we had our own thoughts. You're credited.
Yeah.
You're Vulture, you're fine.
They're gonna send like a DM and Instagram and be like, how dare you use our article even though you said our name multiple times.
Everybody go read the article.
Yes.
You can read it. It's if you're watching it on YouTube, it's probably, I don't know how podcasts work, but it's probably linked under all the things, but especially if you're watching it on YouTube, I'll link it myself. But thank you for being here. Thank you for watching, liking, commenting, subscribing, sharing, listening. Thank you for listening. I should change it to listening for the podcast. even though some of them are watching us.
Yeah.
I hope you got to see some of our faces, especially when we were reading that weird part about the Patrick Warburton movie.
Oh, yes. I'm not even going to repeat it.
Oh, God. That's what I get for not reading the whole article.
But he looks like Zac-Efron. That's all we can get from that.
He does, guys. Look up 22-year-old Patrick Warburton. He looks like Zac-Efron. Anyway, we'll let you guys go, but be sure to leave us a nice comment or a mean one. It all helps the algorithm. It'll hurt our feelings, but like,
And rate and all that jazz. Oh, do
Yep.
we need to travel to somewhere between 2000 and 2005?
Oh God. Honestly, we could go anywhere from 1994 to 2002 if we wanted to.
Oh, can we go to the premiere of Lost World Jurassic Park?
Have we not gone?
I don't think so. Or what year was The Room?
Oh, 2002.
Okay, so we might have gone to Jurassic Park, but I don't know.
No. That's when we went to go see Bush choke on a pretzel.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
Yeah. So we can go see Jurassic Park.
Yay.
And if we've already seen it, we can go back.
Yeah.
We can't see it too many times.
Yeah, even though The Lost World is not my favorite sequel.
You know, it's fun to be there. Hang on.
Yay, dinosaurs. Whoa. Thank you for being here.
See you guys next week.